right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and I want to welcome everybody here to our council chamber. Tonight, we're going to resume the public hearing for the 1200 block East Keith Road. Again, I have a little bit of a script I have to read. This is a quasi-judicial setting put forward under provincial legislation, and so I'm just going to read through this script at the front end. It will only take a couple of minutes. This public hearing is being reconvened pursuant to Section 464 of the Local Government Act and is being held in a hybrid meeting format, meaning there is a combination of in-person and electronic participation by some or all members of council, staff, and the public. The chair has established the following rules for this hearing. We will continue with the established speakers list. At the end of the speakers list, the chair may call for any other speakers not on the speakers list. You will have 5 minutes to address council for a first time. Begin your remarks to council by stating your name. After everyone who wishes to speak has spoken once, speaker will then be allowed one additional 5-minute opportunity. Any additional presentations will only be allowed at the discretion of the chair. Please do not repeat information from your previous presentations and ensure your comments remain focused on the bylaw under consideration this evening. If you've provided a written submission, there is no need to read it, as it will have already been seen by the council. You may summarize or briefly reiterate the highlights of your submission, but ensure your comments pertain to the bylaw under consideration at this hearing. All members of the audience are asked to be respectful of one another as diverse opinions are expressed. Council wishes to hear everyone's views in an open and impartial forum. Some important notes about public hearings. Council is here to listen to the public, not to debate the merits of the bylaw. Council may ask clarifying questions. The clerk has a binder containing documents and submissions related to the bylaw which council has received and which you are welcome to review. This is available on table next to the door and online at dnv.org/agenda. Everyone at the hearing will be provided an opportunity to speak. If necessary, we will continue the hearing on an additional night. At the conclusion of the public input, council may request further information from staff, which may or may not require the extension of the hearing, or council may close the hearing, after which council should not receive further new information from the public. Finally, please note that this hearing is being held via Zoom and recorded in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So again, just a reminder of where we're at in the process. We listen to first-time speakers first, and then once we've completed the list of first-time speakers, then we'll provide opportunity for people to address the hearing again in accordance with the notes that I've just read. So we have a list that's up on the screen right here, and there was one error in there, which is not on the list, which was that there was a person whose name was missed. So between 67 and 68, there is a person named Simon Wolmsley that had signed up in that order, but unfortunately were missed when it was transposed. So between 67 and 68, there will be additional person, but this is the order of speakers that we're going to go through. And then after that time, we'll ask for additional first-time speakers, and then we'll see if there's interest from second-time speakers at that time. So the first speaker that I have is, Gil or Jill Walker, followed by Victoria Negus. Is Jill or Gil here? Welcome, please. And so to do your presentation, come on up and sit up here and in front of the microphone. Again, the meeting is being held in a hybrid format. That means members of the staff, public, and the council can participate either virtually or in person. So tonight you have all members of the council present and participating, with Councillor Murray participating virtually this evening. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay, well, thank you. I've never done this before. Thank you to the district for providing this opportunity. So I actually live in Kitsilano, so you might be wondering why I'm here. And some of you may know there's a similar building that has been proposed, and due to the great work of the mayor, the city council of Vancouver, our premier, this 13-story building for supportive housing is close to being approved. However, many neighbors have concerns about this building, and the petitions and the court challenges have led to its delay. And so I'm here because I want to be a voice of support, and I want to hopefully avoid these delays in North Vancouver. And why should I care about North Vancouver? I work in North Vancouver. I've been an occupational therapist for over 20 years, working in community mental health and helping people in recovery from addictions and mental health barriers. And I know firsthand how important supportive housing is. So I want to be a voice of support and hopefully avoid the delays here in North Vancouver that we've experienced in Kitsilano. I'm also from North Vancouver. I grew up in Blue Ridge. My parents live in Edgemont. My sister lives in Lynn Valley. So I want to be part of this solution here in North Vancouver. And I thought, how can I communicate to you and also you folks how supportive housing is important? And I'm going to share a short story. I still have time.
You do.
About a person I'm working with right now. And currently I work at the Foundry. I support young people from age 12 to 24 with employment goals and also education goals. And I had a young person call me up and say, I want help. I want to do an automotive training program. Can you help me? And I said, absolutely. So I'm protecting this person's confidentiality by just sharing a few details, but this person is living with some mental health challenges. They're getting help from our doctor at Foundry. And they don't have a lot of support. They're from Penticton. We recently did a Zoom call with dad. This particular client's adopted and has been in foster care. And dad said this is the best he's ever seen his son do. He's held a job for more than 2 weeks, which he's never done before. And he's starting the training program in January, which is really exciting. So I said to him, like, how's your housing? Like, how are you doing? Are you going to be able to afford this? And him and I have been applying for grants and student aid. And he said, well, I live at the Travel Lodge. So I'm just going to say that again. I live at the Travel Lodge. So I think a lot of you folks know that's supported housing here in our community. And without that housing, he would not be able to take these important steps. And the Travel Lodge is going to be torn down. And I think I'm here because this housing project is going to be built and provide spaces for our young people to make really good life decisions and provide a safe space for them to contribute to our community. I think I still have a minute left, but that's really what I wanted to say. So thank you for the opportunity. I can't believe I was first.
Thank you for your comments.
Is that how it works? Do I just leave now?
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you for your comments, Joe Walker. The next speaker I have Victoria Negus, followed by Amir Tagastani. Victoria Negus. Is Victoria joining us virtually? Just check the list. I don't see a name on the list that reflects that. So if you are Victoria Negus, please make yourself known by raising your virtual hand or making yourself known to the clerks. And what will happen is I'm going to go through a number of speakers and I'll check back in to see if you just were late joining the meeting, and we'll double check back in. So the next speaker is Amir Tagastani, followed by Hillary Campbell. Is Amir Tagastani here? Okay, is Amir Tagastani joining us virtually? And I don't see a name that reflects that on the list of virtual participants. So I'm going to circle back to that name as well. The next speaker is Hillary Campbell, followed by Simon Walmsley. Hillary Campbell here. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hello and good evening. My name is Hillary Campbell, and I will wear several hats in this community. I am a homeowner in Central Lonsdale. I'm a mother of 2 young children, and I am a social worker with over 10 years experience in mental health and substance use and emergency. I cannot stress enough the impact this project will have for some of our most vulnerable people in our community. Our most recent homeless count for 2023 showed there are 168 people in the North Shore living without a home, which is almost a 40% increase. This is unacceptable in our community. Research overwhelmingly shows housing leads to better outcomes for health, better use of resources, increased resident well-being, and better community integration. A study in BC found that supportive housing residents were 64% less likely to use ambulance services versus shelter clients, and had hospital stays that were over 50% shorter. The same study found that every dollar invested in supported housing creates a return of $4 to $5 in value. Half comes from cost savings for decreased use of services, and neighborhoods benefit from improved well-being and increased local spending. If the compassionate argument does not sway you, the fiscal argument is undeniable. It makes no sense to continue housing people in our expensive emergency department. The future residents of this project are members of the North Shore, and they deserve housing. But let's address the point of what people are really against: using drugs. There is a stigma and stereotype that people who qualify for supportive housing use drugs. Well, let me do some myth busting for you. Not all people who are homeless use drugs, and not all people who use drugs are homeless. The overwhelming number of people that use drugs in our neighborhoods are housed. They are our friends, our neighbors, and our coworkers. They have jobs, drop their kids off at school, work out at the rec center, and get coffee at JJ Bean. They're in this room tonight. They are housed, and nobody is holding 3 public hearings to adjudicate whether their neighbor is entitled to housing. To deny 65 people housing because our own stereotypes and prejudices towards substance use is unethical and a poor way to make decisions. There are over 210 provincially funded supported housing sites within 500 meters of a school, and 32% of those sites have been there for over 10 years. Vancouver has reported there is no evidence of increased crime in areas surrounded by supportive housing. The data does not support a denial of this project. As city councillors, you also represent the people that live in this project. They are also your constituents. They just happen to have the quietest and smallest voice in this entire process and are drowned out by anger and fear. I totally support supportive housing, but just don't support the location, is a thinly veiled cover over classism, ableism, elitism, and perpetuates ongoing systemic racism, particularly to our Indigenous community members who are entirely overrepresented in our unhoused population. It is saying that residents that qualify for this housing project are not entitled to this housing and are not entitled to live in certain areas of the North Shore. This is categorically wrong. I want my children to live in a community that compassionately supports those who are vulnerable. I wholeheartedly support this project and implore council to do the courageous and brave thing: vote for this project. Vote to use our scarce resources better. Vote to remove some of the burden on our overworked hospital. Vote to have a more inclusive society. Vote against stigma and stereotype. Vote according to evidence and research, not with fear and judgment. Vote for this project.
Thank you for your comments, Hillary Campbell. Next speaker I have Simon Welmsley, followed by Michelle Apps.
Mayor Little, can you also just mention that if people have something that they want to submit into the black tray at the table, they can, if they want to submit their submission into the record in a written form?
If you have something that you want to submit in written form, you can obviously email it in to us before the time that the public hearing is closed. But you also, if you have written remarks here you'd like to share with us specifically, the black tray in front of Mr. Walmsley there is anything that's put into there will be scanned and copied by the clerks and shared with the whole council. So if you have some prepared remarks you'd like to submit, that's one way to do it.
When does it close?
It closes when we've exhausted the speakers. Welcome, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to speak on this topic. My name is Simon Walmsley. I believe I may have a unique window into the impact of this proposed project. I am a long-term resident of Lynn Valley, owned homes, raised my 3 children, worked and volunteered in the community. I coached in both Lynn Valley soccer and baseball. My 3 children and granddaughter live in the community and/or adjoining communities. That being said, I am here as a voice for the marginalized. I am also the face of what it is like to fail, to experience homelessness. Several years ago in an accident, I suffered a life-altering traumatic brain injury, one that took from me everything, my career, lifestyle, and all I had built up. I believed that I could simply apply my life skills to overcome this injury, but no matter how hard I worked, I could not regain my cognitive abilities. Not wanting to be a burden, over the years of trying to get better, I slowly went through my savings. I didn't even notice what was happening, a consequence of a badly damaged brain. Before I knew it, everything was gone. I was scared, broken, didn't have anywhere to turn, and I was not going to burden my adult children. With nowhere to go, in great shame and fear, I walked into the Lookout shelter. For all the reasons those on the other side of this dialogue mentioned, I was terrified. The shelter took me in. Over the past few years, I have gained some function and I'm slowly returning to the workforce. I will never be the same, will always have a disability, but I am well and safe and returning to participating in community. I have since dedicated my life to helping those who suffer. I am a volunteer mental health peer support worker. I see clients referred from Canadian Mental Health and Squamish Nation. I visit regularly those in the Travel Lodge and in and around the Lookout shelter. I am a co-leader of a ministry through my church, North Shore Alliance, which provides weekly support to 200 marginalized people in our community. I have come to a great appreciation and love for those who are suffering. Other speakers have shared their witness of the behavior of those around shelters. I know most of those people who are suffering are not in the shelter, they are living outside around it and come in for food and clothing. The reason they are not in the shelter is because of a lack of space. To the best of my knowledge, this proposed project is not a shelter or a fair comparison to the Travel Lodge. It is for those who have a desire to reintegrate into our community, those who want and have taken steps to deal with mental health and substance use disorders, those who desire to be accountable and to participate in their recovery. This proposed project will house those who would benefit from supportive living and community, and as a positive consequence, make space in the existing shelters for those on the street to start recovery. In my time living in this community, I have collected stories from over 120 people who suffer. As I began to truly hear them, those a few short years ago I would have feared and walked by, I have been blessed to be one they could speak with, honestly to tell their stories, understand the trauma and pain they have been through, and to cry with them as I understood how hopeless they saw their situation. This proposal creates hope. It creates a place for those who are far enough along on their recovery journey, as well as being a positive target, a beacon of light to those who are just starting. It is a necessary and vital part of building a ladder out of hopelessness. I have been blessed to advocate for many to get into recovery. They come out clean and often with a deep faith and a desire to reconnect with family, community, and the economy. Unfortunately, statistics say only 15% will stay sober the first time. Why? Because many of them go back, not by choice, but by lack of choice, to their using community. This proposed project offers them a hope of a new community, one where they can work and serve and be our good neighbors. We must recognize we are all connected. Our community will only be as strong and safe as our weakest link. I speak from lived experience on all sides of this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Simon Wolmsley. Next speaker I have is Michelle Apps, followed by Terry Connolly. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Michelle Apps. I am a lifelong resident of North Vancouver. My daughter was born at Lionsgate Hospital just before the pandemic. I have a long history of working with folks who suffer from substance use and mental health issues. I've been a social worker since 2009. I've worked in the downtown east side and many other communities. I now work in North Vancouver, and I'm proud to live and work serving this community. I believe in the radical notion that all people should be housed, no matter what their issue is. I don't really know what else to say other than I think that people should be housed, have access to supports, food, basic human rights, things that we all take for granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Michelle. Michelle Apps. Yes. Next speaker I have is Terry Connolly, followed by Alexandra Choi. Is Terry Connolly is joining us virtually.
Hello.
Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for continuing these discussions. My name is Terry Connolly, resident owner with my husband at 680 Sealand Crescent. We've been residents of the North Shore for 45 years plus. We moved into Sealand Village, connecting with the beautiful surroundings, trail systems, and fabulous neighbors early 2019. The reasons for us opposing this specific project are as follows. Location is not supportive of the people that will live there, and nor is it considerate of the single-family homes directly located in the blocks surrounding. The opinion that it is close to shops, grocery stores, and rec centers is not considering those compromised by mobility or cognition. They will be challenged navigating to reach such facilities. Tucked away at a very busy, dangerous intersection and back lane parking and access that will create the opportunity for undesirable behavior and activity, and not necessarily by the residents, but how these projects attract others in that place to congregate. Developing on land, which is a nugget of green space that acts as a refuge for our wildlife, while a buffer of the busy traffic noise heading up over the overpass and the highway. A symbol of the gateway to the green space and trail system. It seems to me, though, the District of Vancouver removing green space is counterintuitive to what we believe is a hallmark of our community. 3, housing as described at this location does not serve the residents. In fact, it will put the occupants at further risk. The Gordon project in Coquitlam is a living example of what was proposed to the community, the same brochure and communication we have received. I encourage those who may have not reviewed the outcry of not only the neighborhood, but the residents who live in the Gordon project. Mayor and Council, please rethink this location and the model proposed. Review land that does not remove green space and is on a trail system. Look at land that is truly more connected and not tucked away so occupants cannot be seen. Land that is not imposing on single-family homes. Consider a model that supports all its residents for best outcomes. Do not mix in people with active addiction or individuals with complex mental health issues. This is not fair to them nor other residents. Those suffering from these medical conditions need and deserve appropriate care and treatment. Mental health and addiction is an issue for the North Shore. It's the district, the city of North Van, West Vancouver, along with Vancouver Coastal Health Authority to work together with the provincial government. Look at Providence Health, the steps that they are taking with St. Paul's Hospital, an approach that is recovery-based continuum of care, starting with a bed, detox, ongoing treatment and therapy, focusing on recovery, and then a transitioning into the community with the right supports so that they can succeed. We believe this conversation needs to be open to all the district communities and transparency provided on all parcels of land that have been considered. My experience and knowledge comes from years of work in the industry that provides financial support and funding for best outcome treatment interventions in their recovery and function. I contributed many years at the Bottom Line Conference, removing the stigma of mental health and addiction from the workplace. I volunteer for Coast Mental Health, Courage to Come Back Awards, serving as a selection panelist, recognizing individuals who have overcome adversity, whether it is from physical, medical, mental health, and addictions for the past 11 years. In closing, we are compassionate and caring and look for solutions that provide affordable housing for those who are North Shore residents that have found themselves at risk or already homeless. And we do believe we need to have an appropriate treatment and care for residents of the North Shore that may be suffering from complex mental health addiction conditions. We need an action plan that will serve the best interests of the individuals that we are trying to support, while also supporting the community members that have already established their home and have helped make this community a great place to live. I'm a possibilist, meaning I neither hope without reason nor fear without reason. I constantly resist the overdramatic views, but rather seek to have a clear view that is constructive and useful. Thanks for listening and consideration.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Terry Connolly. The next speaker I have is Alexandra Choi, followed by Katie Clegg. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My name is Dr. Choi, and I am the Medical Health Officer for the North Shore. I'm here today to speak, to recognize, first of all, the really wonderful comments that have been brought so far. I particularly really valued the contributions of Mr. Walmsley, because I think a lot of what he said really speaks to the statistics that we see overall when we look at homelessness on the North Shore. I think, unfortunately, there's a misconception that everyone who's homeless suffers with a mental illness or with a substance use disorder. And that's not true. We know that, 22% suffer with a learning disability or have a cognitive impairment. Many have the same type of traumatic brain injury that was unfortunately acquired by Mr. Walmsley and are living with those disabilities. We also know that approximately 10% of those who are homeless right now first became homeless as a senior and were housed for their entire lives before becoming homeless. I think it's really easy to categorize the people who are homeless into a box of the people that we see who are visible. But there are a lot of invisible people right here on the North Shore. Before the meeting started, one of the gentlemen had some comments about the types of people that we would bring to the North Shore and, substance use coming to the North Shore. Unfortunately, substance use is already here. We know that in British Columbia, 5.8 people die every day as a result of the toxic drug crisis. We also know on the North Shore, right here, 20 to 30 people die every year. Since the overdose emergency began, the toxic drug crisis began, we have seen thousands and thousands of people die in British Columbia, many of them from our own community. Substance use is already here. It's one of the reasons why we do consider it extremely important for people to have housing. We know that when people are housed, they have a better chance at dealing with many of these issues, whether they be mental wellness or substance use related. We also know, and I know that having people use substances on site is a very controversial topic, and I'd like to address that. The reason why we find that is actually helpful is because it actually leads to decreased, decreased issues with people's substances. We know that at Insight, one of the first supervised consumption sites in North America, when people were using the site, 23% stopped injecting, 57% entered addiction treatment. We know that when we allow substance use on site, particularly in a supervised way, it leads to better connection with services. And that's part of what we all want, to bring people through the recovery journey. The last speaker, and I'll thank Ms. Connolly also for her comments about Providence and the Road to Recovery project that's going on there. It's also happening here. And housing is definitely part of that. It's hard to have a solution when people aren't housed and aren't stably housed. So that whole continuum from prevention, early intervention, overdose prevention, substance use rehabilitation, treatment support, housing is part of that road to recovery. And unfortunately, it's very hard to have a road to recovery without that piece. I want to also address the comments where folks are concerned about, and I'm just going to use the words in quotations, undesirable activity. So, I think, first of all, as some of the speakers have said today, I think it's very important that we think about all of the residents in the North Shore. And some of those are those who have substance use disorders. But I'll also point out, in places where we have supervised consumption sites, we've generally seen 71% fewer public injections, 56% fewer unsafe needle disposals. And this has been echoed in evidence that we've seen across Canada, in the United States, in the UK, in Australia. It's what we see in general. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't make promises, but I can speak to what we see very clearly in the evidence time and time again. I also want to speak quickly, and I know I only have a minute remaining, but about the piece that was mentioned, again, by the speaker who spoke before the speaking started, about the creation of a new downtown east side. As far as I know, that's definitely not what's being proposed, but that would be what's being proposed if we are proposing putting this development in a place that's already experiencing poverty. We know that if we do not mix people, we do see poor outcomes, poor economic outcomes, poor integration outcomes, really for our entire community, not just for those who are seeking housing. I would also just reinforce the comments of Ms. Campbell that there is a clear economic argument here. Our hospitals are overrun, our healthcare system is struggling, and it's because it takes much more to care for people if they don't have the appropriate intervention. And in this case, the appropriate intervention really is housing. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Choi. The next speaker I have is Katie Clegg, followed by Monica Alexander. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. I'll start by saying thank you for having me. I'm also not a great public speaker, but I felt very called to come here tonight. As a resident of the Compass building at 680 Sealand Crescent, a working professional, a parent, a daily user of the trails near Bridgman and Inter River Parks, I would like to express my strong support for this supportive housing project. I am deeply troubled by the opposition to this project. This is an opportunity to provide tangible support to people who sleep in our parks, to people who are marginalized, to people in our community. I have observed a lot of fear-driven opposition. Fear for our safety, fear for children, fear for business, fear for decreased property values, and mainly fear of the unknown. While I understand as much as the next that the unknown can be uncomfortable, I strongly encourage members of this community to consider what fear they would feel if they had no place to sleep tonight or no network to support them. The nature of being human is that we all require connection and support. No one person is more important than anybody else. While I can't project the future or know what this will look like, there is no us and them. There is only one community composed of children, parents, working professionals, seniors, folks with substance use challenges, and people without homes. And there are probably going to be challenges, but I encourage this community to develop solutions together rather than just saying, not in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Katie Clegg. The next speaker I have is Monica Alexander, followed by Rebecca Knight. Monica Alexander. we have a virtual participant named Monica Alexander? I don't see a name that reflects that, so again, I'll put them on the sort of circle back list. We'll when we get to the end of first time speakers on the sign up list, I'll go back through and double check and see if people have joined the meeting. Next speaker I have is Rebecca Knight, followed by Emmanuel Lopez. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you for having me tonight. This is to Mayor Mike Little and the councillors of the District of North Vancouver. My name is Rebecca Knight, and I have been working in this field on the North Shore for 4 years. My speech is intended to support the proposed 1200 block East Keith supportive housing project. I'm here representing myself and also my colleague Meg out of, we run the North Shore Solutions Navigator project operating out of the North Shore Neighborhood House. For some quick context, we provide supportive assistance, resource referral, and navigation to low-income individuals. These supports include helping individuals find housing, affordable housing, financial supports, food resources, and much more. There are no barriers to accessing our program. We have worked with hundreds of North Shore residents who are looking for affordable housing on the North Shore over the last year. We have worked with clients with issues ranging from predatory landlords to demo evictions where residents have no options for similar rent rates at our current market rental rates. We work with varied demographics of individuals, including those who have been experiencing homelessness or precariously housed for a long time, to those who find themselves newly homeless or vulnerably housed for the first time. This includes seniors, young families, individuals with disabilities, and everyone in between. When Meg and I say that we are in support of this project, this cannot be understated. We believe this project is critical to the livelihood and survival of individuals facing multiple marginalizations and barriers on the North Shore. As we anticipate the development of the Travel Lodge site, with our hardworking shelter often overextended beyond their capacity and the cost of housing steadily increasing, we need supportive and affordable housing more than ever. Many of the residents who we anticipate would be living in the prospective East Keith supportive housing site would be living on disability assistance. There, they would be getting a shelter through disability assistance. They would be getting a shelter allowance of $500 and a total monthly income, including the shelter allowance, around $1,400 to $1,500. I would like to note that currently the average one bedroom on the North Shore is going for $2,600 a month, and the average bedroom in a shared accommodation, a single room in a shared accommodation, we see listed online on Facebook and Craigslist every day when we're scouring for our clients for around $1,200. Clearly, this housing would address a crucial gap in housing affordability for those who need it most. As we all know, these rates are unlivable. The survival of our community members is on the line, and we cannot fail them. People lose their housing for reasons outside of their control. I've worked with multiple long-term North Shore residents, even in the last 2 days, who have become homeless for the first time. I work with folks at the Travel Lodge, and I can think of dozens of individuals we have worked with who would be perfect for this housing. Many of the individuals we anticipate would be eligible to access this housing at the proposed project are longtime North Shore residents. They are already living here. They just need a place to be able to exist safely. We are increasingly meeting a number of clients who are falling through the gaps of services available and need safe, stable housing as a foundation so they are able to work on their needs and goals. The amount of support that so many of us at hardworking agencies can often provide falls short when held up against the need. We are calling for every form of housing, resource, and support we can get as the compounding events of the last few years, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the apartment fires we've seen on the North Shore, the inflation of daily living expenses, and skyrocketing rental rates have pushed huge numbers of people into the margins in our community. I grew up here on the North Shore in Lynn Valley, and I want to be able to be proud of our community. Thank you for your time and consideration in listening to what I had to say today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for your comments, Rebecca Knight. The next speaker I have is Emmanuel Lopez, followed by Sean Bahid. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you.
The discussion today brings me great hope. It's incredible that people in our community are gathered to discuss a project that could potentially save lives. I will start by sharing my experience. My name is Emmanuel Benalis Lopez. I'm 27 years old, and I'm a first-year university student at Capilano University. It feels incredible to become aware of the fact that due to having access to life-saving support of supported living in the government, I'm now able to not only attend university, but to also have the privilege of providing my input regarding this project. In 2013, I enrolled at Trinity Western University in the hopes of attaining my bachelor's degree. My goal was to eventually become a lawyer. During my third semester at Trinity, I began experiencing symptoms of mental illness, and in January of 2015, I dropped out. I was hospitalized at the Hope Center and diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. This was horrible for myself and my family. I began seeing and experiencing the many barriers that people like myself face on a daily basis. Unfortunately, most of us go on to cope with our symptoms by abusing substances. And this is a reality that is heartbreaking to me, my peers, and healthcare providers. When I began treatment for mental illness, I was hopeful. I was hopeful that I could make a difference and inspire others battling with mental illness, that despite these horrific symptoms in our illness, we can still live meaningful lives. I was hopeful that the support I was receiving would continue to be accessible to myself and others like me. However, that hope disappeared when I overdosed on my medication in an attempt to cope with the voices in my head that no one else could hear. I became entrapped in misusing my medication as a means of escaping the tormenting reality in my mind. I blame myself for it. I blame myself for my addiction, and I blame myself for my suffering. However, I now realize that I was simply trying to survive. At the time, I had access to financial support from my incredible family. They willingly and lovingly paid for my drug and alcohol treatment program on Bowen Island. I now realize that the majority of people like me do not have access to this luxury. So I got sober and I got my life back. Then the voices came back and I relapsed. My parents again willingly and lovingly offered to pay for yet another inpatient treatment program, and I responsibly and gratefully accepted their generous offer. I got sober, I got my life back. Then the voices came back, and then again, I relapsed. At this time of crisis, the pandemic had started, and inpatient treatment programs across the province began shutting down. Luckily, my mother was determined to find a place that took in people like myself, even amidst the height of the pandemic. She found a place that would take me. I became a patient at Together We Can on Kingsway in Vancouver. I got sober, I got my life back. After completing the program, I lived in second stage housing. There was a qualified housing manager and others like me that were trying to get their life back. When I was living in second stage housing, the voices came back, but this time I didn't relapse. I attempted to take my own life. Thanks to the support and competence of the housing manager, I survived. As you can see, having a safe place to live and be supported can be life-saving. After 2 months out living at the second stage house, I contacted my caseworker at the Hope Center and asked if there was a place where I could live that would provide me with support to ensure that the voices never did come back. And they didn't. The voices never came back. I moved into Arberlin House, a group home that is subsidized by government and ran by CMHA and Vancouver Coastal Health. I continued down the path of sobriety and the voices never came back. I lived at Arberlin House, a couple blocks away from the proposed project. For 2.5 years, I lived there. I was provided with incredible support by the staff of CMHA and Vancouver Coastal Health. They helped me build my resume, they helped me reapply for school, and they helped me ensure that the voices never came back. At Arberlin House, I lived with 4 roommates. We had access to food, to showers, and a bed to sleep at night. Along with this, there was 24-hour mental health support that we could access if any of us were ever to experience a crisis. I was grateful every day that due to hardworking people paying their taxes, I had access to a place that I could call home. There are many risks and obstacles involved when we provide housing to people like myself. We fear that we might find needles on the ground. We fear that the crime rates will go up. This fear is valid. This fear makes sense. But you know what also makes sense? Providing a home to people like myself and providing mental health support to people like myself to ensure that if the voices do come back, we can survive.
Thank you very much for your comments, Emmanuel Benalis Lopez. The next speaker, Sean Vahid, actually sent a note saying he wanted to withdraw. And so just wanted to check and see there's a Sean on virtual. Just want to see that wasn't. I don't see a virtual hand going up. Okay, so that speaker has withdrawn from the list. The next speaker is Sarur Sarfrazi, followed by Darren Guild. And I believe Sarur Sarfrazi is joining us virtually.
Hello, my name is Lou, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm an immigrant and an apartment owner living in Silicon Encompass building. And I never received any financial support from Canadian government or my home country. And even since I was 22, I never get any financial support from my parents. What I want to say is that mental health is more important than financial and free stuff. And on a web page, I read that since 2021, the number of homeless people has been increased by 39% in North Vancouver and West Vancouver. And that really made me upset, but I'm not sure if building and adding more supportive building helps and decrease the number of homelessness, or it doesn't, and it just attracts more homeless people from all over Canada and even USA. And I disagree with this building in my neighborhood because once I asked a police officer why there are so many homeless people in downtown East Side, and he told me there is a supportive housing, but those homeless people do not prefer to live there. So I don't want my neighborhood look like the east side of the Vancouver with so many drugs and not good looking views and bad smell. And yeah, I wish we can find a better location and other having better ideas and better investment in mental health and other cases to decrease the number. And I heard the story that people got the supportive building and they have some support and they love their life changed. But I'm wondering how many of them get this support and their life gets changed. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for your comments, Sarur Sarfrazi. The next speaker I have is Darren Guild, followed by Julian Summers. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. So my name is Darren Guild. I am the manager of the North Shore Housing Center and a community member who has lived in North Vancouver their entire life. I currently reside in the Hunter building that overlooks Sealand Park, approximately 2 blocks from the proposed site. I am here today to speak on behalf of my company, Lookout Housing and Health Society, for approximately 1 or 2 minutes to address concerns raised by community members and correct inaccurate information misrepresented as facts. I would like to speak as a member of this community for the remainder of my time with the understanding that I've been providing support services in this field for 11.5+ years. I find it necessary to make this distinction as not every idea I share today will necessarily reflect the beliefs of the organization I work for. I want to start off by addressing the comments made by Jeff Falk and set the record straight. Our housing center provides services to 4 classifications of service recipients: residents or tenants who live upstairs in our transitional housing units, shelter guests who stay in our emergency shelter, community members receiving services around basic needs, outreach services, and access to emergency weather response space, and visitors from other communities who may need assistance and support for a limited time. On top of that, you have people from the greater community with little to no association with our services hanging out in the area. Some of Jeff's observations during his visits are being portrayed as occupants or residents of our building when they are in fact not. The person who appeared catatonic was probably a person who used our OPS space to use safely and keep needles out of parks. That could not be supported within our building any longer, as we are not able to operate the space as a long-term drop-in center on top of all the other services we are providing. We still perform checks of a person's basic welfare in situations like these to the best of our ability. We appreciate the community calling other resources and supports, such as first responders, to help address this complex social issue and ensure people's safety and security within their community, or a visitor's safety who looks unwell. Part of the emerging struggle in the opioid crisis is benzodiazepines being in the local drug supply. This creates a sedating effect and makes supporting people more challenging, as they are more likely to present as being in a catatonic state, but respond to stimuli and maintain a proper level of breathing. This issue is not as a result of providing services. It is a result of not being able to offer enough services and support to keep this out of the public eye on all occasions. Residents of the building, who should be limited to 2 years at our transitional housing, often stay much longer due to there not being enough supportive permanent housing for community members of North Vancouver, and they are not responsible for increased crime and the like. These issues appear to me to be coming from others receiving much more minimal services or no services at all. Most residents and many shelter guests are ready to be good neighbors and would thrive within a home that offers the level of support this permanent housing option would bring. It is important to meet people where they are at and fit them into the housing continuum appropriately. Lookout Society is committed to referring appropriate people to this site that are ready for supportive permanent housing and have shown an ability to be a positive part of community. Some people may not even be ready to stay at the shelter for various personal reasons. As for a permanent tent outside Valhalla, there isn't one. These issues come from being a multi-purpose building, facilitating transitional housing, shelter services, outreach services, emergency weather response services, and access to basic necessities for any community member struggling to make ends meet, all at the same time. The proposed purpose-built permanent supportive building is centered around addressing the residents' needs specifically. This proposed purpose-built facility should certainly have an OPS space and a lounge area connected to it, where residents struggling with addiction issues can stay safe, receive support, and not be pressured to go to their room or out into the public. This should be provided separately from the main lounge, so residents who are not using have a separate space to hang out in. I hear the community's concern regarding children in the area and the fact that no criminal record checks would be done, and would propose that people on the current SORA registry, when applying to live there, not be eligible to stay there without applying for due consideration of waiving this housing requirement of being housed by a committee of representatives, the housing provider, the police force, VCH, and BC Housing, to look at specific circumstances that may warrant waiving this housing requirement on an individual specific basis.
Mr. Gill, can I have you draw to a close, please?
Done.
Thank you very much. The next speaker I have is Julian Summers, followed by Elaine Dow. And Julian Summers is joining us virtually. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. May I share a screen, please?
Yes, you may, and welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing. We'll just confirm that your screen share is working. Hang on just a moment. It hasn't taken over the screen yet. Just checking with the clerks. Is panelist able to share their screen? Oh, appears to be starting now. Okay, yes, I can see a screen. There we go. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Thank you to the previous speakers and people listening. I'm going to present a view that will run against. I think my view will be something along the lines of what was characterized as a thinly veiled disguise for something nefarious, but I'd like to begin by sharing my sense that there is a common good that might unite all of us, and certainly all of the comments that I've heard thus far. I'm a lifelong resident of the district, as is my wife and our kids. And in 1985, I began the drive to work in Coquitlam's Riverview Hospital. My career has really followed the experiences that I had clinically there, and it's really what's consumed my research. Around BC, there are a number of concentrations of people experiencing significant hardships that resemble those that we see in much more frequently in the Lower Mainland. They've always been prevalent. They've always been under-addressed, and that's critical. To council, I'd like to emphasize 2 points, if I may. One is the governance responsibilities that relate to some of the potential responsibilities bearing on this site. And the other is really the evidence of what helps best. So I'm starting here with, where are people who experience multiple forms of hardship all at the same time and for multiple years? They're in and out of hospital due to what are described as mental illnesses, and separately substance use problems. They're in and out of prison. They need money. They're socially isolated, is one of the key characteristics. It's none of these details. It's the lack of social support. And here's where they exist in high prevalence, and there are no resources there. They move. I've had, through various work I've had the privilege of being involved in with people that we meet in urban areas in Surrey, Nanaimo, many times in the downtown east side, the community court, the drug treatment court, and also engaging people voluntarily, which is what we did here. We aimed to identify the people deemed hardest to house, and this is what they looked like. They had kids. 25% had been in foster care in BC. They wanted to work. Almost all, well, 85% had moved to Metro after their problems involving homelessness, mental illness, and other hardships had commenced. When we had the opportunity, this is now, this is the world's largest randomized controlled trials replicated in Vancouver and other Canadian centers. What we learned as it relates to this project is that if we attempt to support people in a congregate setting who experience the types of hardships that I summarized earlier, the results will be grossly inferior to what we would achieve if we offered them choices of housing in dispersed residences, which is doable. Crucially for districts and municipalities, the numbers of of communities that need to be included in the number of the housing register overall have to be dispersed throughout the province. We have to intervene earlier and where people have existing social roots, and we're not doing that. So when we offered people housing, and this is where we met them, they chose housing that was dispersed. We could have provided them with housing right where we met them. Nobody who we met in the downtown east side chose to stay in the downtown east side. And this is true internationally. 84% of people who are homeless with mental illness have a preference for independent housing. When we provided people with scattered housing, these are the changes that we recorded from administrative sources of data. In the congregate setting, there was no similar change. And it's because the culture of the building, even with rich resources, was essentially the culture of the street, and it attracted entities that were not positive for the well-being of residents in the building as well. I'm over time. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Dr. Summers. The next speaker I have is Elaine Dow, followed by Shelby McDonald. Is Elaine Dow here? Shall be virtual. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Hello, my name is Elaine Dow. I'm a resident of the District of North Vancouver. Overall, I support community housing. Homelessness in Canada is a growing and widespread national concern. Supporting housing is going to be the new normal. But I do have concerns about the housing project at 1200 East Keith Road. My primary concern is the location. The supportive housing project is located on a postage stamp of land between two major highways and a 5-lane arterial road. It's beside a very aggressive intersection. There's concern for the increased pedestrian usage crossing the intersection with a mid-rise residential tower built on the corner. This particular location jeopardizes their personal well-being and safety due to the noise of daily sirens, traffic congestion, and unsafe conditions for walking across the road. Something that doesn't seem to have been mentioned, and I'm going to mention because it was in the literature and the online presentation that I watched, was for the Indigenous community that is involved. How is this healing? How is this location self-supporting in nature? Major conflict between this particular location and the related health issues of the residents. I feel you're doing a disservice to these people. These homeless people deserve more. They deserve better than what you're offering. They deserve a location with a more natural setting, a more peaceful environment, and a more safe location. My next issue is the type of resident. It sounds like it could be a resident with personal issues, substance abuse issues. The rooms are for one person, not for families. It's not really clear who this is. It's very ambiguous. And I think this has led to so much controversy of who actually is living there. It's not really clear. It's very ambiguous. The topic of who's living there seems to be skirted, avoided. Although it's noted that there are 5 beds for critical care. The needs of people who have substance abuse are very different than the needs of people living in general supportive family housing. I feel the governance of this project has been non-transparent. It's not really clear who's living there. It seems people with mental health issues, substance abuse issues, but the literature and online presentation information is not saying this. So people are assuming this. It's really not very clear. I have other comments on the ambiguity. I'm going to jump past those to get into something more important. It talks about the Indigenous community as another component. It says an Indigenous consultant was hired to consult with the Indigenous community. The building materiality is to be with Indigenous design and resources, to make a deep connection to the land, to highlight cultural Indigenous significance and sustainability of the project. An Indigenous company has been hired to manage and provide the services and programs of this supportive housing project. I took all these references of Indigenous from the online presentation presented by government employees. These are not my words. So I'm assuming that some of these residents are going to be from the Indigenous community. I have no idea what percentage. If it is from the Indigenous community, you are definitely doing them a disservice, sticking them at the corner of these busy roads. It is completely unacceptable. The other issue I have, if it is people with substance abuse and mental issues, the absence of resources for the in-house at this location to assist residents to transition off substance abuse is unacceptable. The online presentation said referrals would be available. I'm so sorry. referrals is unacceptable. There needs to be something on site. If the government is going to house a group of individuals with mental health and substance abuse issues in a common space, then rehabilitation services must be available on site. Otherwise, it is simply governance negligence. I suggest that you look to the European models for housing and rehabilitation. These models have been achieving success nationally and reducing overall drug addiction at the same time helping addicts into recovery. Pivot the tens of millions of dollars intended for this project and invest these monies into a real workable solution, a plan that endorses recovery coupled with housing. Be a leader in developing a transitional housing project that is duplicatable. Be the pilot project that other cities can copy and duplicate. Be the leader. Be duplicatable. Do this across your province. Be the pilot project for the whole of Canada.
Thank you very much, Elaine Dow. The next speaker I have is Shelby McDonald, followed by John Dignon. Shelby McDonald is joining us virtually.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on such an important topic. My name is Shelby McDonald, a local resident of the District of North Vancouver for the past 13 years. I'm a mom of 2 children and an active member of my community, a taxpayer and concerned resident. The proposal for the supportive and complex care housing at 1200 Heath Road raises significant concerns for our community. Placing a facility in close proximity to schools and daycare facilities in a residential neighborhood poses potential risks for the well-being of residents, especially considering the complex needs of the intended occupants. The lack of clarity on funding details and the absence of comprehensive plans for managing issues such as traffic, substance access, and community impact further exacerbate worries about the viability and appropriateness of this proposal. The potential burden on local emergency services and the possibility of increased taxes adds additional layers of concern. It's crucial to thoroughly evaluate the implications and engage in a transparent dialogue to address these valid community concerns. I have serious concerns for both my family and my community for this development and would like to see this proposal reconsidered and the location of the supportive project to be reevaluated. While I come with empathy and concern for those with substance abuse, mental health, and homelessness, I am not supportive of this project, in particular, the location in a residential community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Shelby McDonald. The next speaker I have is John Dignon.
Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be spending my birthday with you tonight in Council Chambers. Thank you.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. I'm a resident of the DNV and my kids go to school just down the road or down and across the road from the proposed site. I'm going to echo probably what Shelby just said, but others, the gross number of speakers have stated that this, idealistically is a commendable housing proposal that comes perhaps with poor site selection that will have a negative social impact to the harmony and enjoyment of the facilities around the proposed site. And to be clear, I say this with compassion, not just for those living under unfortunate conditions, but also for the children, seniors, and other residents that are of equal standing in our community that will likely be impacted by this project. I do believe that we need to find a solution to solve our housing gaps, so don't make me misunderstood there. I also have concerns around the stated intentions and likely reality of the proposal's outcomes as it pertains to funding and funding sources. In the report to Council for the proposal, it states that senior level government funding has been confirmed. When I inquired further about this at the open house event at the Holiday Inn in November, The response I received from a BC Housing rep was that she had no understanding or information about the source of the funding. So we inquired further with BC Housing via email, and the response I received was verbatim what I'm going to read to you now. Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience in our response and for reaching out with your question. Funding details will be confirmed pending due diligence and successful rezoning. In case you missed it, the first part was in the the report to council saying that funding has been confirmed. And the second part was the response from BC Housing saying funding confirmed pending due diligence and successful rezoning. So I know I'm arguing technical points here, but what is it here? And the devil's always in the detail. We asked BC Housing for clarification on this and to elaborate on the conditions of the source of funding and what the due diligence might be. We're yet to hear a response from them. We also made a call to one of the councillors to hear from them, with the expectation that surely council has insight into this and can give us clarification. And unfortunately, they had no information to share on the matter. So my concern here is twofold. Point number one, that the promised funding becomes used as a wedge by the BC government via BC Housing against the DMV and its residents to assert their desires and directions after the zoning bylaw has been potentially approved. And once it goes ahead, forcing amendments and concessions to the final proposed development in order to finally realize that funding. We could see decreases in the number of staff at the facility, or perhaps increases in the number of complex care units, all by virtue of the BC government being essentially the tail wagging the dog. We've already heard by the responses from BC Housing that they are definitely the ones intending to control this proposal. For example, when questioned verbally at night 2 of this hearing, whether the proposal could be modified to be a dry site, the answer received was a very firm no, with no opportunity for concession or consideration there. Point number 2, with inconsistencies, is really to do with inconsistencies in what we're being presented and what we're hearing back from the project team. It appears that we're being presented with the illusion of truths in the proposal. And again, the devil is always in the detail. I can speak further on point 2 as it pertains to the cited statistics that have been used, within the proposal and the supporting materials, which are in most part misleading or perhaps better characterized as dramatized. There are numerous examples that might take longer than I have allowance for to fully cover, but I'd encourage you to look into the stats that are presented, perhaps regarding the homeless numbers for the District of North Vancouver, rather than the entire North Vancouver, where DNV homeless numbers were accounting for but 17% of the 736 homeless persons that were noted in the proposal. And if we're to compare, perhaps there's a vast delta between the numbers that were reported in the 2016 homeless report, again used in the proposal, and the most recent numbers reported in the 2023 homeless count in Greater North Vancouver paper, which is showing about 77% less homeless than the 2016 report. So again, a lot of data inconsistencies here that are perhaps not telling the full or truthful story. So, question to you, do you truly have the confidence in the information that is being presented to you? And I'm wrapping up. Do you have confidence that BC Housing will stick to their end of the bargain? Do you have confidence that the partners in the project that are owed millions of dollars, as it's been reported by the BC government, will have the capacity to fulfill their obligations with an unreliable funding source? Or are you willing to be complicit in glossing over the details and misrepresentations to, as it said, fast track a proposal that is clearly not fully baked yet?
Draw to a close, please.
I will, because we as the residents and taxpayers will be the ones left holding the bag if things fail. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you very much for your presentation, John Dignon. Then at this point, I'm just going to go back and circle back to the people who had indicated that they wanted to speak but weren't here at the time we called their names. So we're just going to do a quick double check. Has Victoria Negus joined the meeting, either virtually or in person?
There was a Victoria, but she declined, so that might be different Victoria.
Okay. Is Amir Tagastani here? Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I understand that numerous individuals have expressed their concerns regarding the safety issues associated with this development and introducing a large-scale supportive housing development project in this family-oriented neighborhood with parks, playgrounds, and daycares. In an effort to provide a fresh perspective, I would like to share some of my observations from the past 7-8 years as a resident of the 1300 Keith Road East block. Through conversation with my neighbors, I have come to believe that many of these observations are shared amongst them. And they share similar concerns and frustrations, which I will outline here. By the way, 1300 Keith Road East, the block is the one right to the east side of the 1200 block, which is being proposed for this development. So a little about myself. My name is Amir Tangistani, and I'm a proud Iranian Canadian who moved here to Canada in 2009 for my studies. My wife and I bought our house in 2015 and moved to the 1300 Keith Road East block. Since then, significant changes, developments, and construction have taken place in our immediate vicinity, just a few feet away from our property lines. And there has been, part of these transformations, there has been a few major projects such as Highway 1 Link Creek connectivity improvement, which included the construction of an eastbound on-ramp that extends over Link Creek to access Highway 1. There was a tree clearing that happened as part of that project. The Keith Creek was relocated further south, which was its own project. That project completed in fall 2021. Highway 1 Main Street Dollarton Highway Interchange, which included the reconfiguration of the Main Street Dollarton Interchange on-ramp. That was another job. Keith Road Seymour Parkway Interchange, which is an east-west connection that provides access to Highway 1. And then another project, Highway 1 at Mountain Highway Interchange, which was a massive upgrade to the Mountain Highway overpass. Here's my observations. The 1300 Keith Road East block neighborhood has experienced a significant decline in the overall sense of safety due to a noticeable increase in the rate of crimes, particularly break-ins over the past few years as a result of these changes. Unfortunately, myself became a victim of such an incident. In the mentioned vicinity, East Keith Road has undergone an expansion, adding 3 new car lanes on top of the existing 4, not to mention the introduction of 2 new bike lanes. This expansion has eroded the charming and family-oriented residential atmosphere that initially captivated us when we purchased our house here. If you're a regular commuter through the new Mountain Highway intersection, especially during winter, you are well aware of the perpetual congestion with motor vehicle traffic in both directions, depending on the time of the year. Conversely, during quieter hours, when traffic is lighter, the road transforms into what feels like a step away from becoming a highway. Cars speed and make excessive noise during the night without any speed control systems in place. These circumstances raise significant safety concerns, particularly because our community consists of houses where children and pets reside. On the north side of the 1300 block, the natural green belt behind our houses was replaced with a park, resulting in the removal of numerous trees that once provided protection from the highway nose. As mentioned previously, a new ramp was added to the south side of Highway 1, north of the 1300 block, bringing the highway noise even closer to our homes. I have highlighted these concerns because the 1300 Keith Road East block neighborhood has already endured numerous challenges and frustrations over the past 6 years. The prospect of a new development of this magnitude in our community is simply incomprehensible for us. I respectfully urge the council to prioritize addressing the existing issues rather than introducing additional challenges to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Amir Tagistani. The next speaker I have, Monica Alexander. Monica Alexander here in person or virtual? Don't see a name that reflects that. Okay, Marquez. Okay, so are there additional first-time speakers that would like to add their comments to the hearing? Just raise your hand. I'll try and get virtual speakers and people in the room here. I see a hand over here. I see a virtual hand here. Just, I know it's hard to see it, but there's 69 individuals also on the virtual side of the meeting. And so there will be hands arriving from that side as well. And so we'll try to include them in the feedback. If you could start with your name for the record, that'd be appreciated, but you have 5 minutes to address the hearing. Welcome.
Sure. Hi, my name is Suzette Halter. And I'm basically going to mimic what Elaine Dow said, but I'm going to approach it from more of my experiences. So for years, I lived across the street from an apartment complex very similar to what you're planning. Emergency services like the police, paramedics, and the fire department were called to that building every day without fail. You're planning on putting this building, which will house people with serious needs, on the corner of one of the busiest intersections in North Vancouver. How are emergency services supposed to get to these people when they are in need, when Keith Road and Mountain Highway are gridlocked for hours every day? Is placing a high needs facility at the corner of a busy intersection simply because the plot of land is available the best interest of these residents? And also I'd like to say that I am a care professional working for the elderly. I know homeless people that are living in their cars. I have close relatives who struggle with addiction and severe mental issues. I'm familiar with each group that you plan to house there. Each has unique problems and unique needs. They do not mix. Before I came here, I told my 93-year-old client where I was going, and she wanted me to pass this on to you. She said, "Mr. Mayor, would you put your elderly mother in that building?" Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. The next speaker I have is virtual participant Michelle Brosson.
Hi there. Thank you.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Although I do not live in the affected neighborhood, I do live on the North Shore. I do know a number of the individuals who could stand to benefit from this potential housing development, and that's what I'd like to speak to. For the last decade, I have had the privilege of caring for the unhoused or the precariously housed residents on the North Shore. These are individuals that call the North Shore home. They have family and friends on the North Shore and want desperately to be housed on the North Shore. I have never felt unsafe when caring for these individuals, doing house calls or community outreach to tents or shelters. In fact, I have witnessed firsthand their compassion for others and their connection to their community. I have listened to their stories of resilience as they have found a way to carry on despite having a history of trauma or complex medical and social needs. I have witnessed firsthand how their lives stabilize once they get out of the cold and have stable, secure housing. They have a place to store their belongings, keep track of medications, and prepare food. They are able to connect with the supports they need, keep track of medical appointments, and rebuild relationships. Once individuals become more stable, as their social and medical needs are met, crimes of survival go down. For those folks who use substances when they have a safe place to live and use, the incidence of public use goes down, and drug paraphernalia and garbage is less likely to be found outdoors. There are less visits to the emergency department as the incident of acute medical concerns such as recurrent infections and traumatic accidents go down. I've seen them reintegrate back into society and community when they don't have to spend their whole day focusing only on survival. The reality is the North Shore already has quite a number of unhoused individuals living in their cars and motorhomes, on their friends' couches or outdoors. They're already in our neighborhoods, just like all over the rest of North America. It is better for our community as a whole, including families and children, if all members of our community are safely housed. I appreciate the North Van District Council and Livermore neighborhood looking into treating our unhoused residents with respect and dignity. Appreciate that. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much for your comments, Michelle Rosen. We have a couple more first-time speakers from in the room. Yes. And then the next speaker after that will be Sarah Third, joining us virtually. So welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing. If you could start with your name, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruhina Arif, and I live on, I'm one of the homeowners on Shavington Street, which is about 50 meters away from the proposed project. And I'm extremely against the shelter being built like literally next to my house. I'm a new mother as well, and I'm really scared for the future of my child. Every morning I walk my 2 dogs that route to go to Inter River, and I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, but if someone's gonna attack me there, because I've walked on the east side previously and I've been attacked there when I was younger. So therefore, like I'm just here to raise my voice that I'm against the project. And if you're really gonna go with 60 units built over there, please build it for families, not single, for a single person. You can have like families who has low income and 2 children. I'll be happy if they were my new neighbors, not people with mental issues and drug addicts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker I have joining us virtually is Sarah Third.
Hello, thank you very much.
Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
For sure, not much of a public speaker myself, but hi, my name is Sarah Third, and I also live extremely close to the proposed project, and I wanted to voice my extreme support for the project. I believe our supportive services have been severely underfunded for decades, and that this project will be providing critical resources for an already overly taxed system. I spent a couple years in a shelter as a child with my family, and we were housed with residents with a broad range of issues, from substance abuse, mental illness, or just deep trauma and abuse. And every single one of them was a beautiful human being doing their absolute best to get by with the resources they were provided. And without that housing, many of them would have turned to more drugs. They would have been on the street. And I'm so thankful for that housing, and I really wish that there are more opportunities for people to have access to these kinds of things. And these people are already here. With the current economy, there's more people closer to homeless than I think anyone really cares to really ruminate on. And we need to have these services now in order to support as our population continues to increase. North Vancouver is going to change. We're going to keep getting bigger. We're going to become a bigger city. It's the progression of our infrastructure, and I think it's important to make sure that we also build necessary services. I believe this is a good location for it. I think it's got a good location for services, and I don't believe it's particularly harmful to be around a highway. When people are worried about how they're going to eat, how they might freeze to death the next night, or whether or not they'll be able to sleep and protect themselves from getting attacked in the middle of the night, it pales in comparison to me when we're talking about the impact that traffic might have. And I believe that there's a very deep-seated need in our community, and these people are already here. They're everywhere. They're already sleeping on our streets. And it's much safer for them to be housed and with services than discarded and ignored to the point where they become jaded to society. I think a lot of these people have a lot to contribute, and we should give them the opportunity to be able to contribute. And I would really love to see this move forward. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Sarah Third. Is there another speaker here, first-time speaker in the room? Okay, so I'll go, okay, yeah. First-time speakers only, please. Yeah. Welcome, you have 5 minutes to.
I'm not going to take 5 minutes. My name's Kim. I wasn't planning on speaking.
Sorry, did I catch Kim? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I know North Van really well. I went to school here. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas, and I'm regularly here. I have a lot of loved ones here. And I've been hearing a lot of just talking around like the substance use continuum, how people need a lot of support, how there is a lot of compassion for people. I mean, I know, there's a lot of diverse opinions in the room, but I will say as someone, I'm also a social worker. I've been in the field for over 10 years. I did nonprofit work before then. And that system is not doing well. It's doing poorly. And I can't say that it will be successful without housing. And that's really the truth, because if people are going into detox, it takes weeks, and at this point, almost like a couple of months out. Even road to recovery, it's like there's so much time in between to go from detox to treatment to recovery to second stage. There's massive gaps in between all of that. And it puts people at significant risk of overdose and dying. And for me, that bothers me, like keeps me up at night. And I just think we can do better. And housing is really safe housing. Our housing right now, I know that there is transitional housing closing, and that's happening all over the place. Our modulars are closing. And because of that, there's so many people on the street. I know people are saying, oh, it's going to be the downtown east side. It won't. But even I understand why people are homeless in the downtown east side. I would not want to live in an SRO. I would rather be homeless. It's abhorrent. And we need to do better. That's me.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have a virtual participant, Ladan Shariati. You've raised your hand. A prompt keeps popping up on your screen saying, will you accept coming on the panel? We need you to click on that before we can include your comments. So we're going to have that sent to you again. Okay, great. I think that time it worked. Hi, welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. One of the things that really stands up for me is that those of us who are raising our voices in terms of saying that we don't want this establishment to be where it is not that we don't have compassion or love or care for people who are experiencing homelessness or mental health issues. It's that the location is what we are all worried about in terms of how these people are going to get support. Like it's not close to transit. It's at a very busy intersection. I don't want to repeat all the concerns that other people brought up, but as someone who travels between North Van and West Van, sometimes it takes about hour and a half to come to the site, to where I live. And that will pose a serious issue for when someone needs help at the establishment. Also, something else that really concerns me is that I am all for integrating people, housing, but I want to know what measurements they are taking in terms of intakes and people who are going to reside at this location. Are there going to be families? Are there single men? What stage in terms of treatment they are? Like, like I've heard a lot of the speaker talking about like people who want to work, and they are working, and they are having issues with housing, and I do believe that people like that would 100% benefit from housing. But if people are not ready to take steps in terms of their recovery and improvement, I think they need more support than just housing. I think they need service at home services where they get mental health support, where they get addiction counseling. And it's not clear whether these services are going to be provided, considering that location is a safe location for them. So I really urge people to really consider, okay, we need housing for our homeless population, but is this the best location? Is this location is going to be accessible for them to go places, and also for services to be able to access them when they need services, and the most importantly, like, you know, what population we are housing, where they are at in terms of wanting to make changes to improve their life and get treatments. And I think these needs to be clear so people who are living in the community feel more at ease in terms of who is coming here and what services are provided for them. And again, you know, I'm 100% for housing and affordable housing and housing homelessness, but I think there is a lot that needs to be considered before we do that. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much for your comments, Ladan Shariati. Is there another first-time speaker in the room? Okay, please. And then I have a virtual participant, Sam, will be the next speaker after that. Welcome. First-time speaker?
Tonight, yes.
Nope. Sorry, you spoke at one of the previous nights.
I did, yes.
So I'm going to need to have you
Okay,
take a
I'm
seat.
sorry.
I'm going to call for second-time speakers as soon as we're through the first-time speakers, and we have an opportunity for some council questions. That's all coming. Any other first-time speakers in the room who haven't spoken at a previous evening? Welcome. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing when you're comfortable.
I don't think you can be comfortable in this room, to be honest. My name is Ryan Weeb. I'm just going to be short. Following up on what John said, there's a lot of information in there that's misconstrued. Trying to find information about statistics is like pulling teeth. Digging up anything, it always relates you back to social housing stats. Trying to find other stats is damn near impossible. Sorry, my language here. There's an article in the Georgia Straight that is social housing crime rates, do they rise? And it says it's a very difficult question to answer because they do rise. They do go back down, but they don't go back down to where they originally stated. And these calls are just specific for that building. They do not include anything in the surrounding area. So, other than that, yeah, I do oppose. I don't know what else to say. I'm not heartless. I do have two friends, two quick stories. One, constantly in issues with addiction. The only way he found his way out of it was getting himself away from those situations, away from people that were encouraging him to take substances. Second friend was clean for about over a year, turning his life around, grandkids, married. On his birthday, he went out, celebrated the UFC party, went home to his wife, got a phone call from a friend, went to one of these residents to visit a friend, and they found him at night, OD'd. So I don't know what else to say about that. So, but I do oppose. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Ryan Weeb. Virtual participant Sam, can you hear me? Virtual participant, you've got your hand up. It still says you're muted in the system. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
No. I can hear you clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Perfect. Okay. I just don't want to repeat all. Actually, I oppose this project. I live in this neighborhood about 10 minutes from the proposal project. And I don't want to repeat all the concerns that, because from previous nights and tonight, the people who are in favor of the project say the same things almost, and the people who are against it said their concerns. And I have not prepared any written notes, so what I'm going to say is coming from my heart. And first things I want to mention is the petition being signed by almost 1,500 people, residents of this neighborhood, who are against this project because of the location. This is the first thing. This is the voice of 1,500 people opposing this project. So it's the first things. And it's, I think you, Mr. Mayor, as a mayor, and the councils, you're supposed to be the, actually as elected members in this democracy, to hear this voice as a residents here, taxpayers, and people who vote for you to sit there. This is the first things, the petition. The other thing I noticed about the people who talked in favor of this project, they talk about necessity of this project. Okay, could you find anyone in, not this room, probably the whole Canada, who are against the necessity of addressing the problem of homelessness? I don't think so. Especially we people here, with family, good people, working, middle class working people, and we don't want homelessness could happen. This is the second thing. So we talk about location. I haven't heard about those people in favor of this project talking about project. They just pointing the emotional point that you could say something and you know, just pointing that emotional point that say that, oh, it's, you don't have compassion. It's a necessity. And by these projects, these kind of services they would get. Nobody is against the addressing this problem. And the lady said here that it's the busiest intersection in the whole North Vancouver. Come on, it's the location, ladies and gentlemen, who are in favor of this, and all of you say, oh, homelessness has to be addressed. Yes, we are talking about location. We are not, the subject is not a homelessness problem that you all mention again and again and again. We want to get to our home from work. Sometimes we are in traffic 1 hour. Can you believe it? The traffic goes all the way from this intersection, all the way to Lonsdale sometimes, to St. George's. It's unbelievable. Sometimes from East Keith Road to Boulevard, Grand Boulevard, all the way to Lynn Valley. Is that traffic is that bad? We are talking about location. Okay, this is the second thing I wanted to mention. The other thing that the people who are in favor, I've heard it, that they want to sell this idea to all of us that, oh, okay, not all these people who are homeless, they don't addicted, they're not addicted, or drinking problem, or mental health problem. I don't want to say 100%, but honestly, I don't want you to answer me. Honestly, in your heart, in your mind, how many times you passed a person on the sidewalk in the east side of Vancouver, North Vancouver, Travelodge, Lookout Shelter, And how many times you've seen the person that they're high or they're drunk? You can't say, obviously, they have those kind of problems. It's obvious. I don't say they're criminals. I don't want to say that. I understand. I'm a human. I understand could be one of my family members. I just want to say that don't bend the reality to sell your idea. Be honest. Don't say here that, no, they're not all the, I don't want to say the number, that 90% or 80% or that kind of thing, that to argue about that.
So
But
your time has passed, Sam. I need
sure,
you to
sure.
draw to a
I'm going
close.
to wrap it up. Sorry, but how many times you honestly you pass those people and you've noticed that kind of problems on and that kind of people? And the other thing is about the neighborhood and location. Have you
Sorry,
seen that
Sam,
kind of? Okay.
You are over time, and so you can come back and sign up as a second-time speaker
Sure,
when
sure.
those items comes up, but your time has passed. Okay, is there another speaker from in the room, first-time speaker? Okay, so we'll go to the next virtual speaker, which is Stephen Shugrim. Stephen Shugrim, I see you've got your hand up, you're a panelist there, but you are still muted. If you could unmute, that would be great.
Can you hear me now?
I can. I'm going to get you to speak up nice and loud, though. It is a little bit faint, but welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Okay. I spoke briefly last time, a little bit unprepared, and I failed to mention it.
So if you're a second-time speaker, I'm going to need you to wait for the second-time speakers. We're still going through the first-time speakers.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll come back to you. Are there any other first-time speakers, virtual or in the room? First-time speaker, come on up. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 minutes to address the hearing. If you could start with your name, please.
I'm John.
John, thank you.
I didn't prepare anything. I'm here for my friends and support. And yeah, I support the social housing development. I understand that the piece of land is not really doing anything at the moment. So might as well use it for social housing, in my opinion. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, John. Okay, any other first-time speakers, virtual or here in person? Okay, so I'm just going to do, just noting the time as well. We normally would have a bit of a break around 9 o'clock. So I'm just going to check in. Do we have questions that have been submitted by council, and do you have responses prepared for them? Okay, so before we return to second-time speakers, I'm going to have some, perhaps Tamsin, you could field the questions, or Ms. Atfa, I don't know, whoever's set up over there to field the questions and responses for the record, please. Please. Second. And then once we've gone through the questions, then we'll open the floor back up to first and second-time speakers. And I do already have 4 names of people who have indicated that they want to speak a second time. So when we come back to that, the first speaker is Jeff Fox, Rod Marining, Hazen Colbert, and I thought I had a 4th on here. Oh, and Stephen, who was just here. And then I see Simon as well at the back. But we'll don't worry, we'll flesh out the speakers list once we've gone through the question.
Can I just ask a question of clarification?
Is there something unclear about the process?
Yeah. I just wonder, because the first time when I spoke, I was speaking on behalf of, I guess, a delegation.
I don't think our system makes a distinction, but you'll have an opportunity to speak tonight. Don't worry about it. Okay, so back to staff for clarifying questions, please.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council, community members. My name is Tina Atfa. I'm the manager of community planning with the district. So far, I've seen about 9 questions from mayor and council, and I will read them out and with your permission, Your Worship, refer them to appropriate staff or partners for answering.
Thank you.
First question. This is with regards to residents wanting to know data references or more recent research that supports some of the responses from staff. Very broad question, but it has come up from a number of the speakers, and I will ask Tamsin Guppy to address that, please.
Thank you. So for council, it's in your questions and answers from today. For everybody else, it's in the binder, and it's also there for council as well. We have a variety of references to studies and overviews The other thing I would add is for anybody who is looking for research, BC Housing has a research center. They have a library. It's online. You can put in requests. You can also search a whole variety of studies that are there. We found it quite useful, and it has information on a variety of the topics that have been raised over the course of the public hearing and over the course of the last couple of months of questions. So I think that provides quite a useful reference point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next question was similar in nature, and I think Ms. Guppy has answered it. If she wants to add anything more with your permission, where can the public get additional information that has come in after the second and third meetings in addition to the book?
Yeah, and the other thing I might add there is if there are questions that come in after the public hearing is closed, while council can't get new information until they vote on the bylaw, members of the community are still open to reaching out to me. If you have a question, I can then forward it on to whichever representative has the additional information, or I can track down the answer for you. And the BC Housing Let's Talk website also stays active. So we'll continue to provide information on this project if it moves forward, as it moves forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The next two questions are related. What is the capacity of the Hope Center, and what is the primary purpose of the Hope Center? And then, are patients in the Hope Center locked down or committed? And with your permission, Your Worship, we would ask somebody from Vancouver Coastal Health to respond to that.
Please. I'm going to need you to come to a microphone, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. If you could start with your name and your position with VCH, that'd be great.
Ira Ronas, and I'm the Director for Mental Health and Substance Use for the North Shore.
Thank you very much. Was the question clear, or would you like it read out again?
If you could repeat it, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much. What is the capacity of the Hope Center and the primary purpose of the Hope Center? And are patients in the Hope Center locked down or committed?
There are 28 beds in the Hope Center for adults with mental health issues. They are in a unit where they're certified. Some people have the ability to leave if they have permission, and others don't.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Vancouver Coastal Health on the list while we have Ira here?
There's a question, a couple down regarding funding, and if I could, with your permission, start with that question, which I would also ask BC Housing and Vancouver Coastal Health to answer. So I'm going to the question. Nope. Clarify funding commitments.
Yeah, great. I'll start from the capital side and then we can move over to the operating. So BC Housing has an allocation that's been approved from Treasury Board for this project. It's funded under a program called the Permanent Housing Plan, and it was specifically set aside for this community to address the 60 people that we brought indoors during the pandemic for the travel lodge. The confusion where we say it won't be approved until past due diligence and rezoning is that we're a progressive approval organization. So we get an allocation from Treasury Board and then each individual project passes through its gates. We roughly have a benchmark for this program of around $500,000 to $550,000 per unit. That adds up to about $33 million for this project. The operating funding for this is set aside for 60 years. We make a commitment for the program, which is the duration of the lease in which we engage with the District of the North Vancouver. And that commitment is at a minimum, it's still to be negotiated with LUMA, and so they're in the room. But right now we estimate that a minimum it would be $2.5 million annually for the support services that are attached to this. And that's a commitment for 60 years.
And I think that's specifically to the BC Housing component within it. And so Vancouver Coastal Health as well.
Yeah, there is additional funding of 1.7 million for the 5 complex care housing beds.
There's additional operational funding of 1.7.
It is.
1.7 million dollars for the complex care program as well.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. The next questions I would suggest, Your Worship, are for BC Housing and for LUMA. The next question is the Residential Tenancy Act enforceable at the proposed health supportive housing?
Yes, it is. The RTA is applicable to all 65 units, inclusive of the complex care housing.
Thank you. Next question. Please clarify the percentage breakdown of potential residents for 1200 East Keith.
Great, thank you for that question. So essentially we don't understand exactly what the 65 unit demographic breakdown is. So what we'll use right now is guiding ourselves on for the basic criteria is their residents are adults over the age of 19, all genders. They're homeless or at risk of becoming homeless and a North Shore resident in need of supportive housing, supportive services to maintain their housing. And those are then followed through a needs assessment and an interview and are selected based on supports available to match the needs and existing residential mix. And that's done through a community referral process, in which I spoke extensively about it the last time, but it's populated by Vancouver Coastal Health, BC Housing, and your service provider. So your local intel goes into who these individuals are and the services that are attached to it. We would also want to note that our basic hope would be to mirror the 2023 homeless count. And so just to recap here, those soft targets look something like 69% male, 28% female, and 3% of other gender identity. By age, we would say 8% for youth 19 to 24, we would categorize around 70% of those would be 25 to 54 and 22% would be seniors. If we break that down into further, we would like to house a minimum of 33% Indigenous, which is reflective of your homeless counts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just add. Sorry, and just because I know it's hard to remember all of the percentages, but for council, it is in your Q&A. So it's all written out there as well. And it's also in the binder.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, Your Worship. Can visitors or guests bring alcohol or drugs into the building?
Yes, they can. So alcohol is a legal substance that people are able to bring into any residential tenant building. And we do allow people to have their guests bring their drugs with them, hoping that in that event of that instead of going out and using in the community, they would be using in the overdose prevention site, being safe and not providing hazard to the general community.
The next question, Your Worship, is for the clerk. Council has received a petition dated November 22nd with over 1,000 names on it. There were no addresses or signatures. Is this a valid petition? If not, should it be disregarded by council?
Your Worship, the community charter requires a petition to council to include the full name and residential address of the person putting their name on the petition. This petition only had the name of the individuals, so it doesn't meet that threshold. However, council members are free to put whatever stock in the petition as it was presented for what it's worth to them.
The petition will still form part of the public record.
That's correct. It was submitted as an attachment to a submission, and we aren't in the business of editing those submissions. We take them as they come in, as long as they're not offensive material. So it's there, and again, council can put what weight the individual council members deem necessary on that petition, but it does not meet the requirements of the community charter.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question I'll read out, I believe we have answered it regarding targets. Residents have asked about soft targets that BC Housing has regarding the residents of the new supportive housing project.
If you have any further information on that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's just important to know that every applicant is unique and their reason for requiring supportive housing and the services that they need are going to all be unique. For instance, mental health presents itself very differently in different individuals at different times in their lives. And so we hesitate to speak about soft targets. It was part of our previous operating agreements where we had categories of support levels that we tried to target. And we were told by the nonprofits and the communities that we weren't actually serving individuals well. And in fact, we were ending up being discriminatory in those policies. And so what we propose instead is to review our applicants through that comprehensive process to ensure that there are the right services that are attached to them, whether they be in the community or in the building. And so we work up quite a profile on individual residents. They are interviewed to be there. And so BC Housing and LUMA will work with local community groups, Vancouver Coastal Health, and the surrounding nations of the Squamish in the Tsawwaila-Tooth, to make sure that we have an informed decision-making approach, and making sure that that is a balanced mix in the building, and that we have the staffing resources that are attached to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I see 2 remaining questions. Do we have any numbers in regards to mental health patients and persons with addiction going through Lionsgate Hospital's emergency department?
Yes, there are. I'll give you several different numbers. There are probably upwards of about 900 individuals who pass through our inpatient unit, who all pass through our emergency department as well. In addition to that, over the course of, we did a 3-month look from August to November, when we recently opened up a new area within our emergency department, and that number was, yearly is about 5,000, I should say.
Thank you.
Mayor Little,
Thank you.
Mayor Little, could I just ask a follow-up question in regards to the answer from VCH?
Okay.
Is there a number in regards to the length of stay?
Length of stay in our adult mental health inpatient unit?
Well, either the hospital or the Hope Center or the addiction unit, any of the, like, I'm just looking for a general number.
Yeah, general number, average length of stay in our inpatient unit can range probably anywhere from 13 days to 19 days. That's our average. There are individuals who are there for very short periods of time, maybe 1, 2, 3 days. There are also individuals who are there for considerably longer, depending on the nature of their illness. In the emergency department, for people who are there for mental health substance use issues, usually 1 or 2 days, depending on the issues that they present with. And sometimes they do stay in the emergency department, not because there's not a bed available, but because we're doing a further assessment, and that's the safest place to keep them prior to either an admission to the adult inpatient unit or discharge back to community.
And 13 to 19 days would be for the Hope Center?
For the Hope Center, I would say on average, we look at averages different times of the year, and throughout the years that I've been there, the lowest average we have was about 13, and probably the highest is, it gets to about 19 at some points, but that gives you a rough idea of the average length of
Thank
stay.
you.
I just clarify that though, but the nature of this housing that we're talking about is longer term in nature. What are you anticipating the duration of stay at this form of housing?
Yeah, this is what I was talking about was and I thought the question was specific to patients at Lionsgate Hospital, the mental health inpatient unit, and yes, this is different. Absolutely. So we don't have a specific length of stay that's determined specifically for the individuals in the 5 complex care housing beds, nor do we for the other beds either. It's really determinant on what the needs are of the individual. So they could stay for lengthy periods of time, which is quite different than in a hospital. In a hospital, they're there for their acute stay to deal with their depression, anxiety, whatever their mental health issue may be. Whereas here, this is housing, and some people are going to progress through and move out to either independent housing or other types of housing supports that we provide services to through Vancouver Coastal Health.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think there was a second half of the question that we might have left off there as what is the most challenging aspect of supportive housing project once built and operating? Did we respond to that?
Yeah, no. What is the most challenging aspect of a supportive housing project once built and operating?
That's a good question. So I would say that currently the sector, given the resource challenges of the pandemic, certainly would say the toxic drug crisis has put a real strain on the nonprofit sector. And so I would definitely say it would be staffing, recruitment and retention of staffing for operating. So it's to ensure that we have, adequate staffing levels, adequate funding, adequate salaries for those people. And so I would say it's about resources, which I think every industry is facing is around our HR capacity.
Will we have appropriate support for this facility?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councillor Mary. Thank you. So part of our evaluation process does include the operator's capacity. And so we did select Luma as the operator. They were competitively procured through BC Bid and were evaluated in partnership with District of North Vancouver staff. And so that's what we look at. We look at what the resources are that they can bring to the table, their hiring abilities, their staffing complement they have at other sites. And so many nonprofit operators are not applying to competitive RFPs if they don't have the resources. So we definitely have questions surrounding that to make sure that we are hiring the right operator.
Thank you.
That is the end of the questions we have, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're just past 9 o'clock at this time, 9:05. I'd like to give everybody an opportunity for a leg stretch and a bio break. Washrooms are in the hallway there. When we return back in about 5 minutes, we'll resume with first and second time speakers. I do already have 5 speakers signed up to speak a second time: Jeff Fox, Rod Marining, Hazen Colbert, Stephen Sugaram, and the gentleman in the blue golf shirt here. I think you indicated you wish to speak as well. So we'll resume with them, and then don't worry, we'll keep adding to the list as we move on through the course of the evening. I just wanted to prepare those people that they'll be speaking after the break. We'll see you at about 9:10. All right, we're going to resume. Okay, so again, at this point in the evening, first and second time speakers are welcome to join the speakers list. I've got 5 underway already. As soon as we get through that, we'll start taking additional speakers again. The first speaker I have is Jeff Fox.
I'm in the room, but I didn't put my name down.
Oh, sorry. When we did the first night, I noted that you wanted to speak again, but okay, that's fine. The next speaker I have is Rod Marining. Welcome. When you're comfortable, we have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about this important issue. I'm going to try to sum it up quickly in my own head what has transpired over 85 people that spoken. That's a lot of people. I don't know if you're used to that kind of stuff, but my hat goes off to you guys to try to wrestle with this very complex issue. And I still speak to the fact that I think you're out of your depth, way out of your depth, because it's one thing to talk about homelessness. It's another thing to start talking about mentally ill people, people that with strong addictions, people that have criminal records. And it really gets down to this one issue that has bothered a lot of people in my neighborhood, because I live next door. I live right next door. Can you imagine what it's like to live next door to a facility like, you know, each one of you, this is a single, these are homes in this area. So let's pretend that this thing is going next to your house. I want that kind of empathy coming from you. What would it be like? Oh, you want to go on vacation? Okay, you take off for 2 weeks. You turn all the lights on to make sure the house looks like it's, you know, but then you come back thinking that the place is broken into. Now, you know, the big issue here that the public is still concerned about is safety. You know, you mentioned that there's no RCMP report. There's no criminal checks. You know, you can have, I don't know, the worst criminal come into this facility and they're okay. They're accepted. Oh, they're homeless because they just got out of jail or whatever, and so on. But, you know, you got a situation there with 6 or 7 daycare centers, a place, people walking their dogs, everything. This is not a residential facility. This should be on the outskirts like you have in, I mean, I just got back from Kamloops and Ashcroft, there was a farm there and then lots of people were in that farm area because they were away from the cannabis stores. They're away from the alcohol places. They have a chance to detox from the situation. But, you know, you want to put it in a 500 meters from a cannabis store and 500 meters from the alcohol store. I mean, it's not a good residence. I'm an environmentalist, and I'm not into I don't actually personally, I think people are pretty sad. I love animals. I love the North Shore. I was born here, went to Argyle School, and I spent 30 years in my house, at which I'm still there. You know, the point I'm getting at is that, you know, let me talk about just trees, for example. I only got a minute and 50 seconds. Trees people love trees in North Vancouver. There's 4 trees there that are about, I don't know, close to 200 years old. That was before there was any white people, Europeans coming around the North Shore. I mean, here, you know, you people, the council members had the foresight to say, oh, you know, we're going to save these trees for 200 years or 1,000 years. Can you imagine what it would be like if in Vancouver, the City Council of Vancouver had turned around and said, oh, on the corner of Georgia and Granville, we're going to save these 2,000-year-old trees. Boy, and you could go there today and see 2,000-year-old trees. I have, like I said before, I had a 4-year-old buck that come to my house. And it's because they follow a wildlife corridor around that area. I don't know. I do want to say though that the area is different because where I am in my house, I know that it was the base, the bed of Keith Creek, or whatever the name you want to call it. That creek went right through the property. So you have a problem with that property. It's on a slope. It's going to have a lot of water problems with it. And it is the base of a creek. And that creek goes all the way to the grain elevators, and you can go to Rona, and there's a field there, and then that's part of the creek that went through that area, and it was tied into Keith Road. So there we go. I've given you a brief history of the place, and I think this is the wrong location. Please look at the safety issues, and would you like this place near your neighborhood? And I think you're out of your depth. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rod Merning. The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert. I don't see Hazen on as a virtual participant at the moment, unless he's got another name on there. And so I'll circle back and double check if Hazen rejoins the meeting at some point, but at this point, I'm gonna mark it as a pass. I have Stephen Sugrim, followed by participant in the third row there. Stephen Sugrim, can we just actually make sure he's over? Just connecting to the meeting there.
Am I here?
Yes, you are. Welcome. You have 5 additional minutes to address the hearing.
Yeah, I spoke briefly last time, but I failed to mention a few things because I was unprepared. My name is Stephen Sugrim. I was born and raised in North Vancouver. I attended Carson Graham Secondary. I also reside in Compass, which is 680 Sealing Crescent. So I'm also a resident. I was one of many people that sold and promoted and also bought in this building that was ripe, in quotations, ripe for revitalization. And I put that in quotations because this plan would do anything else but revitalize. I would like to remind you guys of the video you guys made yourself, the District of North Vancouver, of your 20-year vision. A lot of people saw this video and chose to take a risk in this up-and-coming neighborhood at the time that was very questionable. This video portrays an outdoor paradise geared towards family life and progress, showing trails, parks, and playgrounds. One speaker in the video even mentions our area as one of the top 10 outdoor capitals of Canada. This location is at the base of one of our local gems. Could you imagine putting something like this at the base of Grouse Mountain or somewhere at the base of Whistler Blackcomb? Lynn Creek is a gem. It's beautiful. There's people that walk it daily, that walk their dogs. There's dog parks. And I'm not opposed to supportive housing. I am not privileged. My parents came here as refugees with $80. So I am far from that. And I know the issues that, where in terms of housing is concerned and the affordability in North Vancouver, especially Vancouver in general. But this location is poorly picked. It just doesn't fit the neighborhood. The location next to the highway is horrible. Putting that housing you have planned will have dealers from all over here, not even here, but across the city, looking to make a quick buck because of its proximity to the highway. I wonder, and I'm curious what the RCMP think of this, but you guys haven't even consulted with them. Also, nor have you consulted with any real professionals, because my problem is not with supportive housing, it's with this particular model. I do not believe that mixed, when you house mixed users and non-users and people who want to recover and also mixed gender, it's just a recipe for disaster. People who choose to deviate from the housing's programs, if they look to run out and hide, there's plenty of creek space and woods and forest for them to go and do their activities. And there's bus stops, I think 3 within a block's radius, where I drive by daily and see children waiting to either be picked up or go to school, go and come from school. Horrible. Because a similar program placed him with a roommate who was still a user, and eventually he influenced him to relapse. Last meeting, I mentioned a friend of mine who I played sports with at Carson Graham, ran out to the highway because his dealers were coming from out of town, and he got hit by a car and died. Someone referred to the story as sensational. Well, I have 2 other sensational stories for you about this area. In May 30th, 2016, a body of 34-year-old Jazz Otwell was found in Lynn Creek. His death was deemed suspicious. In January 9th, 2017, body of 41-year-old Lisa McPherson was found burned in Lynn Creek as well. So this area, if anything, we need to protect it and not make it worse. And I just think this location, putting it next to already, the location near a highway, is just wrong. As someone mentioned, the problem was already here. So you know what? Let's just make it worse, or we can make it better, and go with the original vision that we all have been promised of this area. I'm also, like I said, I'm all for supportive housing. I'm not cold or privileged. I just think it's sad to see what you plan to do with this particular area. I think a better area could be chosen. And also, I don't have confidence in the model. I think you should separate users. And also, if you look up the Alberta approach out of all the provinces in Canada, it's the one with the most success rate in terms of overdose decrease. In 1 year, it went down 50%. And as you can see, Vancouver Safe Supply model, look at downtown. It's been a disaster. It's been a nightmare, and it doesn't work there, and it definitely won't work in North Vancouver. Please do your due diligence, consult with the RCMP, and come up with a better location, because we are not cold-hearted people. We just want to see the right thing done, and a better location could be found. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Stephen Sugrim. I've got 3rd row left, golf shirt there. I've got Graham Alexander, virtual participant Irene, Stephanie Wilson, and then back left corner as well. So we do have a good, then I'll come back out to the room. Please, welcome. Second time speaker, you have 5 more minutes to speak to the meeting.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry about before. I misunderstood
No, that's
the
okay.
motion
Yeah.
at first night. Hi, my name is Bill Dwelly, and I oppose the project, but I don't really want to talk about my opposition to the project. I want to talk about listening to people. You know, I've noticed throughout these public hearings that, you know, obviously passions are high, and it's been said, you know, a number of times that if you oppose this project, you're doing it out of the misconception that homeless people suffer from mental health issues and drug abuse. But my understanding of this project is that it is largely intended for people who suffer from mental health and substance abuse problems. So if that's the case, then misconception isn't really an issue here. We know who is going to be living there. But more importantly, I've also found that throughout the public hearings, the notion, and tonight it was explicitly stated that if you say that you support supportive housing, but not in this location, that's just a thin veneer for racism. Well, I object to that. I don't think that's true. And more importantly, I don't think it's productive. I think that when you vilify someone who disagrees with you, you make it easy to just dismiss what they have to say. And that certainly applies on both sides of this argument. I think in this particular situation, though, it's very important not to say, okay, well, if someone says that they're, you know, for supportive housing, but not in my neighborhood, they just don't want that to happen. I think that's a very unproductive way of looking at it, because it supports the narrative that the only way for us to support people in need is by building that facility. And I just don't think that's true. And I don't think that most of the people that oppose this project feel that, or feel, yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I think that the majority of people that oppose this project do sincerely want people to get the support that they need. But they do believe, just like the last young man who was speaking, they don't think that this exact project is what's going to help with that. And like I said, I think it's a mistake to vilify people who disagree with you on either side, because it lets you just sort of dismiss what they have to say. So yeah, I personally would really like to see everyone in North Van getting the support that they need. I don't think that this project, as it's described, is going to be that helpful. And I don't think it's good for the neighborhood. And one last thing, just on a personal note, you know, the subject of, you know, how disposable that green space is has come up a number of times. And personally, I think that if Dow Chemical had come along and said, you know what, we want to put a chemical processing plant there, just a little one, I think we'd all be down there tonight chanting ourselves to the trees. So I don't think that that green space is as disposable as it's being depicted. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Bill. The next speaker I have is Graham Alexander, followed by virtual speaker Irene. Welcome. You have 5 additional minutes to speak to the.
Before the 5
hearing.
minutes, I gotta somehow figure this computer out. And I want to say thank you, first of all, to all the council, to the planner, Guppy, the head planner, BC Housing, and I'm going to just put this up here, okay? Give me 1 sec.
Just pause for a second. Is that Graham? Is that what you're looking for?
I think I got one, guys. Okay, hold on. Can you see it? Okay. Okay, my name is Graham Alexander.
Just before you start, Graham, can
Yes,
I
sir.
just make sure, can the people at home see that screen? Because I'm
Yeah.
not seeing it pop on the,
Please, make sure
there we go.
doing a
Done.
great job. Okay.
Go for it.
All right. My name is Graham Alexander. I am the founder of GGIQ Developments, the owner of 30% interest in the adjoining properties. I'm also the founder of 24-hour on-demand delivery service across the globe. for vapes, cannabis, and alcohol. This slide will show you the properties which I own in conjunction with Washington Properties right next to the site in question. I have a proposal to council for 2 towers and 108 units at a fraction of the cost. We are going to provide 24-hour daycare service, 24-hour massage, 24-hour food and drinks, restaurant, as well as tugboat bar, a 6-star hotel, and residential suites to increase the values of everybody's property while taking care of the homeless. Now let's get into that. I am now support this proposal as long as it continues to rezone the entire property and build 108 tiny mobile permanent homes for the drug-free environment. This is working all over the United States, New York, Chicago. I visited them all. This is going to be a big hit worldwide. So I asked council to look at rezoning the entire 2 acres with an OCP amendment of FSR 5 with supportive housing component with GGIQ Developments, which is myself, Washington Properties, and the public sector, as you campaigned on my awesome mayor, you work with the private sector. So District of North Vancouver, BC Housing, Vancouver Coastal Health, and myself. I'll probably get Jimmy Pattison. Let's see who I get, Jim Boza. But this is what we want to do. The whole thing, one shot. Supportive housing, guys, as proposed, does not work. And I'll tell you exactly why. I have delivered through Friends with Fridges to Travelodge. I have all the statistics. 78% of all my deliveries for the District of North Vancouver for the first 2 years went to none other than the Travelodge. What a disaster. All these people were like stoned out of their head outside of Denny's parking lot. A disaster. That is not a success. Okay. East Hastings and Main Street started with the supportive housing. Big, big failure. My buddy at the mayor, he's looking at this. He loves it. And this is a 3D rendering of the rezoning proposal for Mountain and Keith, Northwest View, and the little village of tiny mobile homes that all the world will see one day. But right now, I'm proposing 108, half the cost, and drug-free. Now you may say, how do I do supportive housing drug-free? Well, I'm an electrical engineer at UBC. I know Elon Musk. I've got a lot of friends down south that are engineers. I'm an electrical engineer. We've come up with this concept like a pizza pie. It's amazing. Better than the Tesla concept. You get septic, electricity, water, internet, temperature control, 24/7 on-demand delivery service from state runners. Now, where are they going to do the drugs? Okay, that's a big question, I think, for you, Mayor, all of us. Okay, before I do that, I'm going to show you the homes. They're tiny homes, which can be 1 bedroom or 6 bedroom. I want to get down really quickly to the invention. This is an invention. It's a tent and a portable toilet, as well as a tricycle, all in one. And this is how it works. Goes into the unit like such. I beg for like 1 more minute because this is critical for your decision. Okay, that's how it works. This is the mechanical engineering done of the unit. It extends as a king-size bed or a tricycle. And this is the proposal. This is the key slide. I have 20 seconds to tell you. This is a drug-free zone. Families and businesses are right here. If only people saw this 10 years ago and figured this out. Behind Rona, there's no families, nobody. You put these things here, this is where they can consume, or a property I own on Crown. And guess what? We now have an incredibly clean environment. I have a couple more slides, Mayor. If I can just show you, get this into the record, I would appreciate it with lots of love in my heart.
I'd like you to draw to a close, but if you need 20 seconds, that's fine.
State Runners on Demand with Coastal Health, we have all the analytics and statistics. to gather information to improve supporting houses system. I will give encouragement to all the runners based on a proven thing out of the Bible, which relates all religions, be thankful for the moment and consume well. They will get better through encouragement. And last but not least, my future vision, of course, is going to have every one of these is going to have the newest invention that replaces the car and the bicycle, because they're all going to ride in the bike lane. That's pretty well it. I hope we can work together as a team, and we're very excited to meet you guys. And I'll be talking to BC Housing, hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham Alexander. The next speaker I have is virtual participant Irene.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to top that, but I'm going to try my best. I didn't really write anything like last time. I just made a couple of notes really quickly. I do have a very busy life, so I'm just going to start with saying that we met with 2 council members, and by we, I mean community members, over the weekend. Thank you for those that came. I just wanted to, really speak more to the public about what we learned and just my experience as just someone who's never participated in anything like this. So here are just some things. Number 1, so we met with 2 council members. One said the location is a, quote, great island to place residents due to the highway and intersection we're all actually worried about. This opposes the narrative that the unhoused will be reintegrated into society. I agree the location is a dangerous island. It's not close to a hospital, not even an urgent care center. The closest doctor at Park in Tilford requires you to phone in and leave a voicemail to make an appointment. Then you have to wait by your phone because if you miss their call, you won't get an appointment. Does that sound conducive with this patient population? Number 2, as said today, people who have schizophrenia have a higher risk of suicidal ideation. You're putting them right by a highway, nay, an island, like the counselor said, isolating them from resources they need, like a hospital, but definitely a place at risk for their illness. Number 3, this again feels staged. Is it appropriate to have workers of organizations that work with this population come to public hearings? Number 4, we were told by a council member that over 2,000 signatures, and I believe there are 2 different petitions floating around, opposed is meaningless given that there are 90,000 constituents in the district. But how many of the 90,000 actually live in this neighborhood? To say 2,000 is insignificant is a slap in the face of the residents of this neighborhood, as the DNV only has to send a notice to folks that live 100 meters away. So given that radius is over 2,000 against not statistically significant. Number 5, no one has been able to answer why this proposal is fast-tracked as written by the bylaw proposal. Council members indicated they're not sure what fast-tracking means, yet Tamsin wrote this in her proposal. We feel gaslit. Number 6, you have folks from Kitsilano and Lonsdale speak. They do not live here. This will not impact their neighborhood. Number 7, we were told by a council member that the public hearing is just a lip service since the NDP has already decided and passed this proposal. Council doesn't have a choice. Number 8, we were told this is the cheapest land available. It's not really about what the residents need. Number 9, a council member stated that they recently learned from BC Housing that it would now be, quote, up to 15 complex care individuals. Is this the truth being told to the public? Number 10, we submitted 21 questions backed with data and statistics and real lived experiences, and yet could not get a clear data response to any of these questions, which is concerning. To tell constituents to go to an organization's library instead of actually answering our questions with citations and references is absolutely lazy and in any other industry completely inappropriate. How can a council make a sound decision with data presented that is almost a decade old and not granulated to the geographical area in question? I cannot tell you how many hours have been spent by constituents to create the questions thoughtfully. Number 11, the most shocking was the incorrect homelessness 2016 data that is in the bylaw proposal, and it was grossly overinflated by 400%. And it includes 4 different municipalities' data with no breakdown, so we understand the, quote, community needs. Number 12, LUMA and 11 other organizations wrote a letter to the Minister of Housing that BC Housing owes them $20 million. This was in October. Does it seem odd to fast track a project with an organization you're actually fighting to get money from? This seems scandalous and we are being duped. Number 13, again, Just like the last two hearings, the people for this project either don't live here, don't have the same concerns as local residents, or were staged and invited by council. Number 14, a councillor seemed to laugh off our concern that theft in the area could increase as a result of these tenants, or people that are drawn to the area will be scouring local homes and alleys. A council member seemed to think this would be absurd, and first responders felt dismissed. Number 15, what if folks don't have someone to bring their drugs like it was stated this evening? Where will they get their drugs? As stated, it is safe to use within their home. You are contradicting your own statements. A council member has a friend who is an ED doc. I spoke with her and she said the biggest flaw is the drug seeking, as the facility does not have drugs needed for folks with real substance use issues. Number 16, we stood at Bridgman Park, where there's a no smoking sign of a cigarette and a vape. Will a pipe be added to that sign? There are no sharp containers at the park, which is shocking for even our diabetic constituents. We were told that the individual that died from getting hit by a bus on Capilano wasn't a resident. They were a drug dealer visiting the site. As a council member, is it normal to make constituents spend so much time to speak against a proposal? Is this normal? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Irene. The next speaker I have is Stephanie Wilson, followed by the person in the back left corner. And then I'll welcome. When you're comfortable, you have 5 additional minutes to speak.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Stephanie Wilson. First, I take issue with some of the awful statements that have been said about the downtown east side. The people who live in the downtown east side aren't the problem, and they aren't scary or undesirable. They are our sisters, brothers, and siblings, and as fellow human beings, they deserve our respect and care. They are people who are as flawed as any of us in these chambers, and they are people who are continually left to suffer under systems and stigmas. NIMBYism, segregation, and classism are the reason the downtown east side is the only option for some. I spend a decent amount of time on the downtown east side, and people who live or have lived on the downtown east side are my friends. If you look at those survivors and dreamers just trying to make it through the day and judge them for where they live or what you think they do, those are your biases to unlearn. And since the topic of perceived safety came up on November 22nd, I would just like to state for the record that I'm a 5'3" woman and a super heavyweight powerlifter, and I've never been scared to be on East Hastings or near the Travelodge for that matter. And speaking of safety, on November 24th, CTV released results of an investigation that found stranger attacks in Vancouver declined 60% between 2021 and 2022, and that this has declined further into 2023. Yet this data was suppressed by the Vancouver Police Department, and an unprecedented level of what can only be described as fear-mongering was constantly run through the news to justify increased policing and so-called tough on crime policies, which continue to strip people of their dignities and basic human rights. Sure, many people saw scary stories about crime, drug use, and homelessness around the Lower Mainland, but fear isn't necessarily truth. And our obligation to find truth and unlearn these biases we've developed in response to fear is only amplified when lives are at stake. I find it quite interesting that so many people have spoken so forcefully to protect the loving and family-friendly nature of the neighborhood, because that isn't my experience at all. Earlier this year, I spent a great deal of time at the Mountain Highway overpass. A far-right rally camped out on Mountain Highway and then Fern Street every Thursday afternoon for over a year. During that time, rally participants drank alcohol and used other substances, left litter everywhere, harassed residents, harmed queer and trans people living adjacent to the overpass, and generally caused an incredible disturbance. And when I stood up to say that this rally had to leave, local residents, some of whom live right around the overpass, called me every sexist, homophobic, and transphobic slur in the book and complained about a few pride flags. So I find it incredibly hypocritical that so many people are suddenly very, very concerned about the neighborhood when the issue is related to poverty, but seem to have absolutely no problem when the issue was hate and right-wing extremism. And I can categorically say that hate and right-wing extremism are far more harmful to your children than poor people. I also use trails in the area on a regular basis. There are already unhoused people camping in the parks and people using substances on the trails in which your children already roam freely without a care in the world. There are already needles in public spaces because there are limited accesses to sharps and other waste management in North Vancouver. So if you are concerned about those issues, then the solution is to increase services to meet the needs of the people who already live there, not continue to marginalize and exclude people who deserve a safe home just as much as all of us do. If you spend any time in the downtown east side, you'd hear kids on the block, because people who use substances in public also don't want to use near your kids. They use in public because they have no other option. Not all people who enter supportive housing use substances, but substance use has been a divisive issue here. So let's understand why low barrier housing is critical here and around the province. Approximately 24 British Columbians have died as a result of the poison drug supply on the 3 days that we've been in these chambers. The first reading of this bylaw took place on October 3rd. 189 people died that month. The coroner hasn't yet released data for November or for this first week of December, but we can expect similar numbers. So in the time we've sat in our warm homes and debated the future of 65 people, over 400 others who couldn't find safety in time have lost their lives in British Columbia. Fixing safe supply and fixing challenges in the healthcare system is beyond the jurisdiction of municipalities, but municipalities can fix access to safe housing. The Housing First model proposed for this development works. This is demonstrated through projects in Vancouver, across Canada, and around the world. 1200 East Keith isn't an experiment. It is an evidence-based approach that will make North Vancouver a better community. There are no perfect sites, but this is a good start. Thank you.
Very much for your comments, Stephanie Wilson. Next, we have the person in the back left, and then actually, sorry, I've got Lauren online, and then I'll come to you. So yes, please, back left. Sorry, I thought you had your hand raised. No? Okay, sorry. The next speaker I have is Lauren, joining us virtually.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have an additional 5 minutes to speak to the hearing.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you allowing me the chance to speak. I've only got a couple questions and they're mostly directed at BC Housing. I think a lot of my concerns have been talked about earlier today, but my first question is, I brought up in the conversation on the second day of conversation about would BC Housing allow a drug-free, this to be a drug-free site? And I think the council member asked BC Housing and Vancouver Coastal Health, and it was an absolute strong no. If there is such a big, and there is a homeless issue, why wouldn't BC Housing allow for people to get housing if it is in a drug-free environment? A lot of the people that have been, the statistics that have been spoken are about seniors needing help and mental health, but can we not provide those individuals housing with without a drug or access to drug environment? And I was very, very put off by how strong the no actually was from those two organizations. The second piece is I've been surrounded by addiction my entire life. And I know that somebody quoted earlier, and I don't know where the statistics come from, but they said that 15% of people actually stay sober after going through a rehab center, and the relapse is real. So if BC Housing is proposing a institution that has addiction with recovering addicts, potentially, what is the metric to say, what is the success rate of that in the past of people actually being able to stay sober once they're in this facility with people that are using drugs? My personal experience, somebody that I know went into rehab, and thank goodness they've stayed sober, but they were the 1 out of 40 participants that stayed sober. So the 15% actually seems quite low. And so yes, there might need to be a place for people to use drugs, but if somebody is actively trying to be in a facility to have housing that and are recovering, is putting them in a facility with people that are addicts, really supportive of them. Last comment, and I'll cut it short because there's a lot of conversations tonight, but somebody called out, I do think it is wrong to tell the public, go look at this library of statistics. I also want to point out the statistics that everything, for the most part, is old It's not like the bias in the data is there. All of the data that's being used is from BC Housing for the most part, who is actually proposing or with using their data to propose this proposal. So like we've all done statistics, or a lot of us have. The data will say what you want it to say. And so are we looking at a biased sample of data from BC Housing? I'm sorry, I know you guys do a great job, but there is bias to show that the value of properties don't go down, or that crime in the area doesn't rise. It's in your best interest to show those. And so we need to see another set of examples and debate them, right? It's good to see a diverse a sample of data. So that's all I've got to say. Those are my 3 points, and I'd really love BC Housing to address why not, like what's wrong with just providing a homeless shelter that's drug-free, and also the recovery piece for addiction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, Lauren Koenig. Next speaker I have is fourth row left there. Followed by Lorraine, the virtual participant. So welcome, you have an additional 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, I spoke last time and I appreciate the opportunity to speak again. I wasn't planning on it. I actually came here tonight to support one of my fellow neighbors who spoke in support of this project, because it's been quite terrifying to see how some of my fellow neighbors and community members view homeless people, people with drug addiction, substance abuse issues, mental health, and all the misconceptions that just keep circling around. It's really upsetting. I had no idea my community shared some of the views that I've heard. I don't even know what to say. I hope that a lot of you can reference the material studies that are very plentiful, asking people when we have things like Google to go online and read from universities, police chiefs, city councils, public housing. The information is out there and it's overwhelmingly supportive of these types of projects. It's just absolutely so confusing to me to hear this. The site itself, there's just this really bothersome dialogue around isolating people that should be integrated in our community. These are our people. Like, I just don't understand why we need to make them outcasts and can't include them. We have the Park and Tilford Center. There's lots of employment opportunities in that area. The buses go by there all the time. I don't understand why. There's a bike lane. I mean, there's crosswalks. I live down there. I live at the #1 Keith Road, Mountain Highway. I can throw a rock and hit all those roads right from my balcony. And I can tell you, using this area and these streets, it's not a problem. I have no idea why my own neighbors are saying that there's too much traffic. Like, are we just, again, assuming that the people who are going to live here have no idea how to use a pedestrian crosswalk? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Come on. People talk about empathy and compassion. That tree over there has empathy and compassion. Come on, we need action. We need to build something that's going to make a lasting impact and a change. And that's why you guys are here. You have the ability to see through this noise and understand that people are speaking from a position of fear. They don't understand. They don't understand what these people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And they assume and continue on these unhealthy stereotypes that plague progress in our communities. I am part of this community. I own a home in this community, and I believe in this project. And I hope you do too. And I hope you can see through that there are people that have misconceptions and stereotypes about the kinds of people that are going to live here. Please take a look and understand that there's good data out there to help support and develop these types of projects. And we can set an example for the rest of the communities within Metro Vancouver. We need this kind of supportive housing. We need to help people. I don't want to see people sleeping in my trails unhoused, unsupported, and rejected by the rest of us. It's not fair. Okay, thank you.
If I may grab your name for the record, just so we can connect you to the earlier comments.
Tom Wojciechowski.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Next speaker I have is virtual participant Lorraine. Lorraine, you're muted. Lorraine, yeah, there we go.
Hello?
Yes. Hi, welcome. We can hear you now. You have 5 additional minutes to speak to the hearing.
Okay, I have some questions regarding the people that are management, that are be managing it. It seems like they took a bid and possibly they were the lowest bid or whoever, I don't know. But I'd like to know what their background is managing a facility, and if anybody has any medical background for mental and addiction people. Because to manage that kind of residence, you really need people with a background. Because Lionsgate, as you know, has a mental inpatient unit that is locked down. You can go out under certain circumstances, but they don't have a place for addicts. They have the Pete in Emerge that you go in for a couple of days and then bye-bye. But it's not an addict place. And I think a lot of people are concerned more. I'm concerned with the highway because we all know if someone gets super drunk, whether you're an alcoholic or non-alcoholic or an addict, when they're using, if they leave that facility, there's the highway. There is an overpass. What is stopping these people from jumping off or doing something stupid? That is my fear, having a facility like this so close to the highway. Someone's going to get hurt. Someone's going to get killed. A person who does it's going to get traumatized. It's not a safe area. And to house addicts and alcoholics together, or people with mental illness, sorry, I don't understand. The two just don't mix. Personally, if I was in a place and I was homeless and I'm coming home and an addict is outside their place and I have mental issues and I want to go in, I would be afraid. And to put someone that is non-alcoholic or no mental illness or no addiction, mixing them together, I think it's a recipe for disaster. Yes, we need places. We need places for recovery. We need places for detox. The mental and drug addicts do not mix. And I don't think them telling the district or anybody else, the housing people, that you must have addicts, you must have it. You must have a wet place for them to use. I think that's wrong. To me, it's like bribery. It's wrong. If they want the homeless and the places, we need to do it properly and we need to do it right. Because if anybody knows, like on the municipality in Cowichan, just had the last door go there and to talk to them about recovery and addicts. Now, the district really wants to get into that end. You need to talk to the specialists, and that's the best place. The location, I'm afraid it's a disaster for someone dying. It's unsafe. And I'd really like to know about the complex. What kind of complex is it? Is it people that are violent? Are they going to be locked in there? And are we going to have 24-hour care? We need 24-hour people that deal with mental illness, and we need 24-hour addiction specialists. And food, are they getting 3 meals a day? Because they're supposed to be supplying food. Who's going to be checking the rooms to make sure no one is dead in a room, to make sure it's clean, and bedding and dishes, like all that is a big package. And the other thing I like to know is, oh dear, I just got so much on my brain right now, is, yeah, and of course you need them to sign a tenancy agreement, because without a tenancy agreement, a welfare check is not getting paid to them. So this is not doing out of kindness of hearts. Is money's coming in, our tax dollars is paying for it, and that's why you need a tenancy agreement. And then someone mentioned that they'll be in there for 1 or 2 years. You can't kick them out after 1 or 2 years unless the agreement is we're here for a short time. Is this a place that every 2 years you're going to turn over and bring other people in, or what kind of facility really is it? Is it a permanent residence or a temporary residence? And the last meeting, it was mentioned that the people from the travel lodge are first people to be moved in. So it's not the people sleeping in the cars. It's not the people that are in the bushes. I think people are really not listening to all the meetings because the travel lodge people are first people that are coming to this center. I don't know. I think this needs to be looked at more. And I think the district, you have an old Dollarton highway there. There's the new fire hall going in, Wide Tupper gravel. That is a great place maybe for addiction and recovery here. And this could be for mental and other people. Like, there's a bigger picture here. It's not simple. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Lorraine. Would anybody else like to address the hearing a first or second time? Yep, I've got 3 speakers who have put their name up there, 4th speaker here. Just also noting the time here, I know we have some questions coming in from staff. So just to be clear, to extend our meeting beyond 10:30 tonight, we need a majority of council to agree to it. To extend beyond 11 o'clock, we need a unanimous vote of council, which is not usually forthcoming. And so I am cognizant of the time, and we have set aside a potential for a 4th night. We haven't made that decision yet as to whether or not that's necessary. But at this time, I've seen 4 additional hands here, and then I'm going to come back to see if there are any additional comments, clarifying questions from the council. So the back corner there, oh, sure, very back, yes. And then we'll next go to virtual participant Corey, and then we'll go to the very back again and work our way forward. If you could start with your name, just so we have continuity of your comments, that'd be great.
Certainly. So my name is Darren Guild. I work at the North Shore Housing Center as the manager. I live 2 blocks from the proposed site and have been a community member here in North Vancouver my entire life. I heard from the housing provider Luma Native Housing Society that the intention is to have residents of the building under the Resident Tenancy Act. I would suggest a change be made here and have program participation agreements in place opposed to residential tenancy agreements. I would suggest this change based on personal and professional experience. When resolving a matter in RTA dispute proceedings, you first have to go through a long waiting period to be heard by the arbitrator that can last months. Then you go through a process that is not precedent setting or consistent and is based on the arbitrator's due consideration. This ends up causing inequities in rulings and a long wait time before the person is legally removed from the property, often requiring bailiff services. I am suggesting a system similar to transitional housing shelters and recovery houses where residents could be quickly removed from the site should the specific circumstances warrant such a quick response, and in doing so safeguard the interests of the building and the surrounding community. This decision would be initiated by either proposed or enacted by the housing provider and subject to their approval processes, such as having approval to do so by a member of their housing provider's senior level of management above the on-site manager. There should be checks and balances to ensure this is applied in a fair and equitable way, such as using the suggested committee of all committed partners in this proposed project to collectively review or approve the decision in advance, thus providing swift action if needed. This would further allow the service provider to limit residents' guests at the building to approved guests as determined by the housing provider based on the potential guests' past behavior in and around the site. Perhaps part of the approval process should be agreeing to photocopying ID or simply a photograph of the potential guest, giving their name and date of birth during the approval process. This would, of course, be optional but necessary to be received as a visitor. The legality of this I will leave to people more knowledgeable in law than I am, but if it isn't legal now, you have 3 years to adopt law to give the important safety measure legal bearing. This would effectively end potential room takeovers where a guest of a resident takes control of the unit at times, preying on a vulnerable resident, and increases accountability for all. I heard a community member state Luma Housing was quoted as saying Luma Housing does not work with law enforcement. I believe that isn't true. As a similar service provider, I can state that the RCMP are a considerable support and partner to Lookout Housing and Health Society. Lookout does not impede active investigations with reasonable cause, informs RCMP of dangerous illegal activity, and follows rules of confidentiality that can only be broken if someone is a danger to themselves, someone is a harm to another, if there is safety concerns for a minor, or during the transfer of care of an individual. During these occasions, staff discuss concerns with on-site management and work closely with the RCMP as appropriate. At the same time, our service recipients can rest assured their personal information will be safeguarded entirely outside of these occurrences. We also reach out for police support, probably more than they would prefer. I presume it works the same at Luma. I would suggest the police force identify a couple of constables who are great at forming rapport with people and have them visit buildings such as this proposed one regularly to say hi and ask residents how they're doing. And in this potential case, walk through the park, essentially as mobile foot patrol. The tenant selection process should be carefully created and based off past experience, which I trust BC Housing is way ahead of. Initial move-in should be staggered to give the staff and residents time to form healthy professional relationships with each other and begin to form a community committed to increased wellness in terms of social, behavioral, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of their lives. For each member of the site and the community emerging from the formation of this permanent housing solution, I'd suggest no more than 20 move-ins in the first month, including the people with complex needs, and 15 after, each month after, as the fastest possible time frame to move tenants in. Although this is a very important permanent solution-focused facility is needed as soon as possible, I think setting it up for success trumps this urgent need, and the North Shore Housing Centre is committed to continuing to do much of the heavy lifting in the interim, as I'm sure other local partners are as well. This proposed permanent supportive building should also have a dedicated manager to focus on the building's operation, community integration, and collaboration. I'll say further comments if there's a chance for third-time speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next speaker I have is virtual speaker Corey, and then we'll get the other person at the back of the back wall there. Corey Koss, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Clearly, welcome. You have 5 more minutes to address the hearing.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. I wish to speak a little bit about the process of this last 3 evenings now. One of them is the introduction of new information throughout the process, some of which started during those meetings. Usually, you should be given all the information that's relevant for the public and not provide new information during the public. Certainly after the close of the public hearing, we all know, and I've sent you some updated documents on procedures in this regard and the court decisions if you should violate them. I'm still unclear about the oversight of the selection process for the clients of this facility. I hear that there's going to be a minimum of 33% Indigenous. I'm not sure how come there's a minimum requirement there. Certainly 33% out of the, considering the Indigenous population, usually less than the district's population, that would put that proportion much higher per capita. Who qualifies to submit or speak at a public meeting is affected by 3 documents that I found on page 1336, page 1350, and page 1359 of the latest package. Remember, the numbering system will change as the package seems to get updated. And there's no way to find out just by looking at the last item in the package, if it's up to date. I had expected to be sequential just by new information being added to the package on the internet to be the most relevant one, but that's not the case. That makes it very difficult for anybody to follow, and you have to go through the whole package again to see what's actually new. On the page 1336, it of course discusses, and it was repeated this evening, the breakdown that the 2023 homeless count report had, and the various targets for this building that's going to be in place. The letter from Susie Chant, who's an MLA of North Vancouver Seymour, was a sort of surprised to find, and as well worth reading for council. However, the ethics probably, or the correctness of having people who are not citizens necessarily of the district North Vancouver making comments, as was the latest 1359 page, a letter of support from the Squamish Nations. I'm a little concerned that we are not dealing with input by the public, but by rather branches of the government trying to influence the council decisions. As for location, you may wish to follow my old adage that don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. Just how bad do you view this location? Certainly, you're never going to find a really perfect location for this. I also advise council to look at what Turning Point has done in past matters. The women facility that was close to Edgemonte Village worked out very well. The one for the men, they had trouble finding a location, and after the controversy was relocated to another location, but that men's facility is not working as well as the women's facility. And you wonder sometimes if you mix the two together, there might be completely unknown ramifications there. Something to be learned by just looking at what they did. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for your comments, Corey Cost. At this point, Council, I'm just going to first ask for an extension beyond 10:30. So I'll move that the meeting be extended past 10:30 to 11 o'clock. Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Back. I'll call the question. All those in favor, contrary minded, motion carries. So we've extended beyond 10:30 to 11 o'clock. At this point, I'm going to go back to the room again for further comments. I have one more in the, sorry, just forward. I thought there was one at the top of the steps. At the top of the steps? Nope, nope, not yet. Okay, so then I'm going to come up here, up front here, please. Welcome. Welcome. When you're comfortable, you have
Thank
5
you.
minutes to address the hearing for a second time.
Thank
And if
very
you could
much.
start with your name, please.
Sure. My name is Natasha Dutman, and this presentation is a very emotional one for me. And I am honored that you guys allowed me to speak, and God bless you for that. I live very close to the site, and as I was expressing my concerns the first time about the density of the parks around and all that, I wasn't that comfortable, and I didn't know how to manage my time the first time. And there were more people, and I was not comfortable to mention what happened to me. People say that there are misconceptions about people who have drug and mental health issues, but me, myself, right here, am an example of a victim. When I went to Nice, France, in Côte d'Azur, when my mom was a French resident, and I had to go visit her there because she was divorced from my dad. So I had to go see my mom in Nice, and then one time when I went to just fetch a few things from the supermarket, and we had this dense park very close to our apartment complex, I was pulled by someone into the bushes, and I know that I would have been murdered if I wasn't an athletic child that is like in 1980s and I was 11. And if I wasn't an athletic child, and my survival instincts and calling out to God, like seriously, I mean, nobody was in our family were religious or anything. And through the divine intervention, I was able to free myself from the grip of that monster. And to this date, I have nightmares about that. And to make matters worse, when I went back to my city, a friend of mine was murdered by someone who had mental health issues, and she received 11 knife stabs at 11, and I was 11 years old, and 11 stab wounds for the 11 years that I was living. Sorry, I don't want to like get too emotional, but I'm afraid that the same scenario would repeat itself, where there are like vulnerable people. There are lots of elderly and children who live in our neighborhood, and the elderly neighbors implored me to come here and speak on their behalf and express how scared they are. The park is their sanctuary, is the place that keeps them active. And the family environment there is absolutely not ready for such thing. And going back to Luma has demonstrated that is not capable of managing effectively. Travelodge is a perfect example. And going back to France, I am very proud of the French government, where people like me, thanks to people like me, and unfortunately some kids who were murdered, they they came to the solution to create cities, mini cities within the city. One for the drug addicted individuals and one for the people who suffer from mental illness. And they have high security level, and some places is mandatory, most of the places are mandatory to rehabilitate from the drug addiction. And this way their families can visit them, they can integrate themselves into the city and all that. And when I was looking for these, supportive housings and the other horror stories that I've heard from my husband's co-worker, that how he had to move his family because they lived close to a supportive housing, and there were crimes happening, they were screaming, they were urinating, vomiting and everything. And I was also looking at the North Shore Shelter and Housing Center at the lookout, and then I went to the website. I'm sorry that I have to show this, but one of the residents have left a review, and please go read the reviews. And he, with naked like this, half naked like this, goes to a park setting that we have in our area, okay? And this completely brought all of my pain back. And my hands are so cold, and I'm getting all the nightmares and everything. And then I reconnected with a friend that I lost connection with, and he, due to unfortunate incidents, is suffering from mental and emotional health issues, and he was checked into supportive housing, and it was so bad there that his mother, a single mother, had to remove him and house him in her own small one-bedroom apartment, and he's doing better. And he asked me to implore you to please, if you could please build buildings in Lonsdale or some areas that are close to the Lionsgate Hospital, and they're close to the shopping centers, and the shopping areas, and people are walking all the time, and it's more lively and everything. And please don't mix them with the drug addicted people, because he got triggered so many times, and the two do not mix. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And God bless all of you and your families.
Thank you very much for your comments, Natasha. Okay, would anybody else like to speak a first or second time? Yes? Come on up, yeah. Another virtual hand. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Bodlack, followed by someone virtual named Mick or Mike. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I previously spoke on behalf of the owners of East 8th Street and East Keith Road, immediately to the east of the proposed project. For clarity, this time I'm speaking on my own behalf. The proposal to grant people with known mental health issues and drug addictions residential tenancy leases steps from where elderly singles, couples, and families with young children live without even taking the precaution of performing a criminal record check is a hard no. It is not doing enough to ensure the safety of your constituents, and it would be irresponsible to approve. I tried to find the most comparable project to this one, and what I found was a recently approved project in Surrey at 9810 Foxglove Drive, which also has a mix of studios and complex care units. Where did Surrey locate this project? Immediately beside the RCMP headquarters and steps from Surrey Memorial Hospital, not beside a secluded single-family home community and one of the DNV's busiest playgrounds for young children with no RCMP detachment or hospital in sight. As has been stated, the traffic at this location does not allow for timely police or ambulance response. This doesn't tick the boxes and should not proceed as proposed. It is well known anecdotally that crime has become rampant around the Travelodge facility. I've spoken with someone that works in the area that has experienced aggressive behavior, as well as police officers who have said it is a nightmare and that they are called there continually. I requested the crime statistics from DNV's Community Policing Department and was told that they are not authorized to provide that information to me. I've submitted a Freedom of Information request to obtain this information, but have not yet received it. You, Mayor and Council, however, are authorized to obtain this information, and I understand from speaking with some of you that you have already been briefed on the crime statistics in that area. The staff presentation claimed there is no evidence of increased crime from supportive housing. BC Housing, however, did affirm that there is a notable increase in police calls at the outset of operations. I want to know what the crime statistics are around the Travelodge, and I don't think this public hearing should be concluded and this project advanced to second and third reading by way of motion or otherwise until this information is made public. It has been noted that it is possible that a good number of the Travelodge residents will end up at this facility right next to my home. And if it is already known that they are committing crimes, this is doubly irresponsible. I find it disturbing that people opposing this project feel they need to first prove that they are a compassionate person because of the virtue signaling of DNV staff, elected officials, and conflicted individuals employed in the field that don't live in the neighborhood, who imply that opposition to this project equates to being an uncompassionate person. I oppose this project on the merits of the project. I echo the comments of Lorraine from the second evening that I don't think this wet facility is going to be a helpful space for people to come out of addiction. I think the model of granting residential tenancy leases is a non-starter. It makes it next to impossible to evict people even if they are abusive or committing crimes. I disagree with the notion that someone who doesn't want to work and just wants to continue using drugs has a right to a brand new taxpayer-funded $550,000 home, meals, etc., whereas many hardworking taxpayers aren't able to attain as much. I strongly disagree with the careless approach to crime. As a volunteer, I need to take criminal record checks all the time. And yet this project proposes to bring people with mental health and addictions into this community without even checking if they are dangerous or repeat offenders. I disagree with the location. If it were to proceed, it should be next to the RCMP and Lionsgate Hospital. I want to express my gratefulness to this mayor and council that you have been forthright with your constituents in disclosing the use and operation of this facility and have been open to hearing the concerns of your constituents. And I hope and trust that this feedback will spur you to reconsider this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, Simon Bodlock. Next speaker I have is virtual participant Mick or Mike.
It's Michelle, sorry, my Zoom
There you go.
name. Again, thanks for allowing us to talk tonight. And a lot has been said. I think it just needs to be reiterated, given that it seems to be coming up consistently. Does council have the ability to request modifications to this proposal? Because if you don't, you have very little options to ensure that this facility will actually help the homeless that we're hoping to help. I am surprised at the comments made by others about the uncompassionate nature of those opposed and how we have been branded to have misconceptions regarding these people. These are not misconceptions. Our views are formed on information provided to us through this process. BC Housing has stated that 32% of homeless have substance issues, and the 5 complex care residents are specifically for the mentally ill and people with severe addictions. So using those numbers, you are looking at more than 37% of the 65 units to have substance use issues. This is not misconceptions. This is the project's team own statistics. The fact that drug use is not restricted and overdose prevention site is included. Also want to point out that there was no pictures of that in the lovely presentation that was shown. So an overdose prevention site is included and no supply of substances of addiction are given on site. Where are these residents going to get the drugs from? The collateral damage that comes with a building of this type should be considered. There are no mitigation plan or funds for anything that happens outside the facility. And that is where a lot of our concerns lie. Council, you don't have all the information. Corey, I'm not sure of his last name, he spoke with wisdom. We keep learning more and more and more about this project. If this is approved and the district hands over the land, there is no accountability. We don't get a say. And much like Simon just said, this facility would be much more appropriate at a site such as next to the police station and near the hospital. There are better locations for a 65-unit supportive and complex care housing facility. Councillors, how can you make a decision when you don't have all the information? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Michelle, would anybody else like to speak a first or second time? Okay, and I see a virtual hand, Chrissy Schmidt. If we can move Chrissy over as a panelist, please. Chrissy Schmidt, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the hearing.
Awesome. Thank you. I also kind of just wanted to circle around on some things we've heard over the course of the 3 hearings. I was also alarmed. I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me is we've heard a lot from both sides of the story, but what I have seen is the side of the community that is in opposition of this isn't in straight black and white opposition. They've come with a lot of solutions and a lot of compromises. But what I'm not hearing are any compromises or any solutions from BC Housing. And as was recently reiterated about 7 speakers ago, is when BC Housing was asked if the model is at all flexible, it was a hard no. And I just want to reiterate my point on when I spoke. Just because you say no doesn't mean you can't. It means you won't. You know, just because you won't doesn't mean you can't. And they should be pressured to say, what could it look like? Give us some options. And I actually did also learn in my research over the last couple of weeks that the Housing First model originated in New York City about 10 years ago. And what they've recently found after now looking back over the last 10 years is that, yes, in regards to putting housing over people's heads, it's extremely effective. But when they separated the question of, is it effective at helping people with addictions, it was astonishingly low. And that's ultimately what this come down to, is the concern about drug use in the community that's so close to daycares. But ultimately what I'm asking is, like, there is a level of compromise here. And I think there needs to be more questions to BC Housing, because they know that the province has a gun to council's head to say, you have to do this, and they're not budging. And that's not how negotiations work. And that's not how we teach our children to compromise either. And so I'm just asking for compromises from both sides, because there's been a heck of a lot of compromises from the side who has concerns. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Chrissy Schmidt. I'm just going to check in with staff. Have you received any questions that you have a response for?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. There is one question for the Medical Health Officer, Dr. Alexandra Choi and VCH. Many people have said they are afraid for the children who live in the neighborhood and who go to daycares in the area. In your professional opinion, is there any basis for being afraid of the kinds of residents who will live in this project?
So the Chief Medical Health Officer is here, and you're a public official. You're absolutely welcome to respond. We hadn't warned you ahead of time that you might have to answer questions tonight, but appreciate you coming up.
Thank you, through your worship. So I'm just going to speak frankly. I think the thing that I worry about more, and I think the bigger risk, is if we continue to leave people unhoused and precariously housed. We know that lack of housing is incredibly destabilizing. So, you know, I think we can even think in our own lives, you know, if we didn't have a place to go when we were ill, even if it was with a cold, a broken leg, it's incredibly destabilizing to not have housing. And, you know, we see this time and time again in our hospitals and our clinics. People who are unhoused have worse outcomes every time. It leads to, you know, honestly, in every single area, you have a bad wound. You're not able to really take care of it if you're unhoused. And the same goes for conditions like mental health and substance use. We know that, would you like me to continue or no?
Well, I need you to respond to the question.
Okay. Okay. All right.
You're not here for your own comments. You've already done that.
Got it. Okay.
So-
Sounds good. So basically, in areas where we have substance use on site, typically we do not see an increase in crime. This would include theft, robbery, drug-related criminal offenses. This is mostly in places where we have OPSs. So speaking specifically to that issue, because there's been a lot of comments about substance use on site. In the UK and Australia, same thing. In Vancouver, the same thing. No increase in drug trafficking, assaults, robbery, significant decline in vehicle break-ins. In Toronto, same thing. They actually saw a decrease with fewer assaults and robberies. Now, you know, it's across the board. It's hard. You have to look across the literature, but I would say across the literature, it would seem that there is no increase typically with these types of sites. The one thing I would say is that it does depend on where you site them. If you do site them in areas with high poverty already, and I think, you know, Dr. Summers talked about this as well, then that is more of a risk, as we do in some areas. This, according to the latest statistics, would not be one of those areas.
Thank you very much.
Mayor Little, what are OPSs?
That's the use space. What's the acronym for?
So OPS stands for an overdose prevention site. It's a place
Oh,
for people to use substances on site.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, clarifying nature for council?
Only question we've received.
Okay, so at this time, I'll open it back up for a first, second, or third time, and I believe Darren Guild has expressed an interest in speaking, and I have another speaker over here as well. That is the rule on third time speakers, is just don't repeat yourself. I'll have to dog you a little bit on it, but come on up. You're welcome to speak.
I can still say I'm Darren Guild though, right? It's the
Please.
third time.
You can repeat your name. That's
Awesome.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. My name's Darren Guild. I'd further suggest people with complex needs should be housed closest to the staff office. Collaborative case planning meetings should take place weekly at first and probably monthly after that, with all project partners present to collaborate together around best practices and innovative solutions as a team, BC Housing, VCH, and the housing provider. As far as traffic concerns go, the market housing in the area, especially Sealand Village and the Hunter Building, are the cause for increased traffic congestion in the area and an inconvenience to the proposed permanent supportive building, not the other way around. Including staff vehicles, there would likely be 10 to 15 cars at most, likely less than any one floor of any of the high rises in the area. This proposed permanent supportive solution is exactly what is needed to lower issues such as crime and homelessness in the community and help people heal from past trauma, often coming from neglect, mistreatment, and a failure of our society to address these issues earlier. I'd like to hear that the Hope Center is committed to supporting this project with a responsive mental health team that could meet with the housing provider on a regular basis and support those in the most need at the site. With mandated treatment and extended leave, they have tools to help people succeed in managing pervasive mental health challenges that other services such as Stepping Stones simply do not have. Helping those with the greatest need for mental health support in turn helps the community as a whole. Ignoring these issues in one's community only makes them worse. It is a community issue and will take a community to solve it. As a community member mentioned, these issues are already here. It's time we work together towards solutions to homelessness and mental health struggles, as well as other related issues. Approving this proposed building is a great next step for North Vancouver as a whole to move towards that solution. On September 23rd, 2014, there was an article published by Vancouver's Awesome comparing first place residents operated by Lookout Housing and Health Society to another building in the area with a different service provider, which had 2.8 times the emergency calls in the first 16 months of operation than first place did, with an increase of only 13.2% more occupants. This was largely related to going too fast during the move-in process and not forming positive rapport with guests as they move in. According to the respondent of the other service provider, as I was a tenant support worker at First Place at the time, I agree. We did very well forming positive relationships and rapport with all 130 residents as they moved in, and that positive rapport metaphorically moves mountains. The housing provider's manager of a project like this should interview each of the potential residents upon moving in and seek to form strong positive rapport with each person right from the start and set boundaries regarding acceptable behavior. I hope LUMA's representatives consider this suggestion. Our emergency calls at First Place would have been far lower if we didn't have an elderly lady staying there who called 911 to get oxygen from the fire department, mainly due to wanting positive attention from the firemen rather than the oxygen they were administrating. I'd like to see the permanent supportive housing project attract the best staff the housing provider has, that each member of the tenant support staff be required to run community inspiring programming at the site, such as art therapy, life skills workshops, community walking groups, yoga classes, meditation sessions, a community peer program such as community cleanup that pays a stipend for volunteer hours provided to help residents get a sense of spending time productively and getting rewarded for that. Such a volunteer program with an honorarium provided would likely lead to less crime within North Vancouver, as money would be earned in an honest and positive way. Less crime is already all but guaranteed the more supports people receive. At Dover Court, I learned the value of of gardening and building community. Hopefully space will be provided for residents to positively contribute to the community's appearance. Having residents work together on a project helps to form strong bonds and gives a feeling of success and therefore self-perceived value as a human being. Providing the appropriate supports and opportunity at the right time certainly does work, all the while leaning on positive rapport, trauma-informed practice, and innovative service delivery. North Vancouver has the opportunity to raise the bar for all permanent supportive housing in the future and set the standard for how to support those in need within the community as a premier facility, following best practice and creative, innovative solutions.
Mr. Gill, can you draw it to a close?
Yeah, I'll do
And
that
the
right
other
now.
alternative, you've got it written down. If you want to put it in the black tray, we can scan it and send it around to
I
the
did.
council as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll close by saying I'd like to take a moment to say I believe this has been a very democratic process and thank council for hearing everyone who wanted to be heard. In closing, I would like to say I unequivocally support this project being right in my backyard, regardless of whether any changes are made to the current plan or not. I urge council members to vote yes to this important permanent solution. And I'd just like to say thank you to Erica Branston and Bowen Ma for being champions for some of this community's most vulnerable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I believe fifth row. Yes, please, come on up. Okay. Thank you. Welcome. If you could start with your name, that would be great, but you have an additional 5 minutes to speak to the hearing.
Thank you. My name is Linda. So this is my second time speaking, and thank you for listening to me. I walked away not really understanding what this site is really about. And I did some digging, and I don't know if this is right, but I found some information on the Vancouver Coastal Health site with regards to complex care housing and low barrier, which I think this is what the site is, right? And then I kind of question, like, are we doing the right thing for the people that are going to be housed there? There's going to be 65 people who have addiction and mental health. So
Let's be clear about that. So the complex care component is 5 units of the 65.
Okay.
Here.
So I called them, and I asked, I have a tenant. I had to evict him because he repeatedly, drank and did drugs, and agreed with me that he made poor decisions and broke things in the building that I couldn't sustain. So I had to ask him to leave. And I said, hey, would you like to, go seek help, like maybe detox and recovery? And he's like, yes, I've been trying. I really want to. And then so I called the number that was online, and I said, do you have anything? I'm evicting this tenant. Can you help him if I pass along your number? And she said, no. And this is the mental health and substance use supported housing. She replied to me, you have to be so entrenched in drugs and also want to stay on drugs. So I said to her, I'm really confused. I'm trying to help this guy who wants to get off drugs, but maybe he might want to stay. I don't know. I don't know what that is like. But she said to me that, so I said, so it's better for him to say, if he wants to get housing, to stay addicted. And she's like, yes, we realize that there is a gap. And that was so disappointing to me, because I feel like the problem in the downtown east side and drugs, it's already hard to get off drugs, but the problem keeps on perpetuating. We have people migrating into Vancouver, probably crossing the bridge. It's way nicer on this side. And there's no actual real solution. Like, how can we help? Are we putting 65 people together and keeping them on drugs? is that really helping? You know, this problem, I've been in the industry for close to 20 years and I haven't seen improvement. I've only seen things getting worse and worse. And I have 3 kids that go to school in the neighborhood. Will my kids have to see this? And will it be worse? Like, you have an opportunity to help, but help in the right way is what I feel. I also did some more digging because, you know, obviously they're hiring, right? There's a link to the hiring site for data collecting for the mental health and housing organization. And it said on there, you need a criminal record check. So let me get it. Last time when I was here, they said, oh, you know, we have to be very careful with criminal record check because it's a human right thing. But to apply to get a job to work or housing them, you don't, like, you know, you need a criminal record, but housing them and for the people around the community to feel safe, we're left not knowing. That's why this is a problem. I just feel like it's like if you listen to Dr. Summers, he's been in the industry for a long time. He started at Riverview. I feel like consulting him and maybe that Graham Alexander guy who proposed like a great idea, like having lots of housing and having a section. Like maybe I think you should explore those avenues as well and not just ram this through. Yeah, I feel like you're doing the people not justice, like you're just housing them to stay addicts. I think that sums it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak a first, second, or third time? I have a hand over here. Come on up. You could start with your name for the record. Oh, I need you to be at the microphone when you do that, please. I've got another speaker, and then I think it's fair to have that discussion at that time.
My name is Elaine Dow. I'm reading an article from the Vancouver Sun, 2021. It's about a murder committed in a supportive housing project. This is partway through the article. Abbott, I don't really know who Abbott is.
If I could just have you just to be a little forward in front of the microphone so we can grab your comments.
The name of the jump, Abbott is said it's clearly drug-related violence is increasing, and she said supportive housing operators don't have the tools to address the prevalence of guns and drug dealers inside their buildings, their supportive housing buildings. We know we have drug dealers in most of our buildings, she said. People ask, why don't you evict the dealers? Because people use drugs, so they just will be replaced by other dealers. This is inside supportive housing units in Vancouver. Supportive housing staff are unable to search rooms for weapons or prohibit guests because the buildings are covered by the Residential Tenancy Act, Abbott said. Just several people have come up and addressed the issue of the Residential Tenancy Act. This is in the Vancouver Sun, dated 2021.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to start to exhaust the speakers list. We'll see if there's an interest. It's a little bit formal, but would anybody else like to address the hearing a first, second, or third time? Oh, a virtual hand has popped up. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so there are 2 virtual hands that have popped up. So what happens now is, just to be clear, our policy is not to go beyond 11 o'clock without a unanimous vote of council. We do not have a unanimous vote of council, which means we're going to be going to a 4th night for the hearing. And so at this point, I will be recessing the meeting and until we come back for a 4th night. Just checking in with Councilor Murray, yes?
So how many virtual speakers do we have left? Two?
I don't have a unanimous vote of council to extend beyond 11 o'clock, Councillor Murray.
So we would need to extend for 3 minutes past 11, council, to hear two more speakers. Could we just
Assuming
listen?
That's, I think it's making an assumption, Councillor Murray, that that would be the end of the list. And anybody could still add their name at that point. And so the challenge is deciding when to cut off the matter. Our policy is that we don't go beyond 11 without a unanimous consent from the council. I don't have unanimous consent from the council. And so we need to plan for a fourth night at this point. Mr. Clerk, what do I need to do to recess this meeting and prepare for the next meeting?
Your worship, we need to announce the date, time, and place of the continuation. And then everybody who is here that presumably wanted to be here is informed of when this will continue. No need to re-advertise, etc. And the date that staff have identified, looking at council calendars for council's consideration, is Wednesday, December 13th at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Okay. And I, at this point, have 3 virtual participants who have put up their name. I'm going to put you at the front of the list when we reconvene the meeting at that time. So Mo Katemi, Awi Pruko, I believe, and Stephen Sugrim, sorry, will be the first speakers when we return at that time. And then again, it's a matter of exhausting the speakers list, which means if anybody else wishes to speak at that time, we go through the process properly.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but isn't it possible that the speakers that we have left will be done before 11 o'clock? Like, can we just hear them right now?
I think that's highly unlikely with 3 lined up.
Unlikely, but it's possible.
I'm willing to. I mean, that is within the scheduled time, but I think the first speaker I have there is Stephen Sugrim.
Ends at 11.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, we know that.
Okay, so assuming then that I can continue, Mr. Clerk, I have Stephen Sugrim wishing to speak, and he has joined us virtually. Stephen Sugrim, can you hear me?
I would rather speak at the 4th hearing because through a few minutes isn't enough for all 3 of us to be heard.
Would you like to speak now or not?
No, I'll speak at the 4th meeting.
Yeah, well, we're trying to determine if we need to have a 4th meeting or not. So do you have comments? If so, now is the right time to make them.
I would like to make one quick comment on the location. One of the speakers earlier was saying like I feel you, buddy. I'm not. It's not that I'm not compassionate towards people facing this issue and this type of housing. When it comes to the location, my concerns are, like I said, my friend I went to high school with passed away crossing the highway. It's not because he was dumb and homeless or a dumb drug addict. He was strung out on heroin, and that slows your reaction time. And he was on the west side of the highway. His dealers came from the east side of the highway. He ran into the middle to collect the drugs, and he stumbled and got hit by a car. So that's my concern. It's not because he's dumb or he's stupid or I think less of him. Second is the location with regards to criminal activity. You know, again, we haven't consulted with the RCMP. Its location right by the highway would just increase drug activity, not just locally, but you will attract dealers from all other parts of the Lower Mainland, and, you know, Surrey, Burnaby, East Vancouver, that don't have to, you know, they can basically ghost the police on the highway. That's my concern. Those are my two concerns about the location. It's not that I think that less of these individuals that they can't handle traffic. And that's just what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments. So it's clear that we're not going to be able to complete by the end. I now have a total of 6 speakers that want to speak. And so I'm going to say that we're going to recess to a 4th night. Is that everything you need, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Your Worship, just to restate, so we're recessing the meeting now, just shortly before 11 p.m. to reconvene on Wednesday, December 13th, 7 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Okay, thank you very much. Good night, everyone.
Mayor Little.
Yes,
Mayor Little.
Councillor.
Sorry. We have Monday available. Why wouldn't we do it Monday?
It's done. Thank you, Councillor Murray.